After the 9 Brilliant Star Lord departed, the Blood Tier Grand Exalt's figure vanished as well. The Devourer Plane was one of the 7 sacred planes of the Saints' world. It was also where the Blood Tier Grand Exalt cultivated. As a consequence of the Blood Tier Grand Exalt remaining on the Devourer Plane for long periods and cultivating there and comprehending the ways, his presence had affected all the laws of the world on the Devourer Plane. Cultivators could comprehend the truths of the ways with much greater ease here. It was a heaven for cultivation, which was why it was renowned in the Saints' world. At this moment, the Blood Tier Grand Exalt sat on a throne with a thin layer of bloody mist around him within a grand, majestic hall in a blood-red divine hall on the Devourer Plane. The huge divine hall was empty as if there was no other living creature aside from him. It looks like Anatta is going to recover her cultivation soon, the Blood Tier Grand Exalt murmured from the throne. Anatta has already comprehended the laws of creation, destruction, fire, and space. She has reached 100% with the laws of creation, destruction, and fire, while even the laws of space have reached around the 5th heavenly layer of Grand Prime. She was already extremely powerful, ranking within the top 3 of the Saints' world. Only the person from the warring gods could keep her at bay. Now, she has comprehending a 5th law, the way of love. Anatta is becoming more and more powerful. In the current Saints' world, the person from the warring gods is already dead, while the space-time elder who matched her over 3 million years ago is dead as well. Once Anatta recovers to her peak condition, will there still be anyone who can stand up to her? The Blood Tier Grand Exalt sat on the throne and felt pressured. Anatta had comprehended 3 ways to the limit. Moreover, her 4th way, the laws of space, was close to the limit as well. On the other hand, he had only comprehended 1 way to the limit so far. Moreover, Anatta had already begun comprehending her 5th way, so the difference between them was widening. But the 5th way she's comprehending is the way of love. Emotions are one of the hardest things to explain in the world. It's a double-edged sword. Although it can allow Anatta's strength to climb to a higher level, it also restrains her. It might even create a crisis for her. If the heavens have emotions, they too will age. Grand Exalts have already become an embodiment of the ways, a part of the ways of the world. They represent the world. As a result, Grand Exalts shouldn't have emotions, or they will be bound by countless crises. Not only will they be unable to advance their cultivation any further in the future, they might even meld with the ways and pass away. Anatta is playing with fire. The Blood Tier Grand Exalt seemed to realize something when he reached there. Suddenly, he shook and revealed his blood-red eyes. His eyes were completely red, and blood seemed to surge within them. It was a chilling and terrifying sight. I understand now. After Anatta comprehends her 5th way, there will be her 6th way. She'll make her reincarnation fall in love with Jianchen first, and then pass this heart-throbbing feeling onto her original body so that she can comprehend the way of love. Once her feelings towards Jianchen reaches an extremely deep level, she'll personally take action and kill the person she loves most to comprehend her 6th way. Her 6th way is a way of severance. With Jianchen's death, she'll forge her 6th way, the way of heartlessness. Only once she gains her 6th way will she return to the path of emotionlessness. Anatta's reincarnation is the fruit for her 5th way, while Jianchen is the fruit for the 6th way that she's raising. No wonder she protects Jianchen. As it turns out, she's protecting her fruit of ways. But that works as well. Jianchen bears the Azulate sword spirits. He'll definitely be someone who stands with the Immortals world, and Anatta had been injured by the Master of the Twin Swords in the past. Now that she is using the successor of the Twin Swords to forge a fruit of ways, it's a form of revenge, a 6th way. A 6th way. I never thought Anatta would gain 2 ways from a single reincarnation. She's becoming more and more terrifying. There might even be a day that the person from the warring gods won't be able to overwhelm her. In a certain region within the Saints' world, many scattered meteorites hovered about. Jianchen happened to be sitting on the largest meteor emotionlessly in white robes. He took off Mo Tianyan's mask and no longer disguised himself. He revealed his true appearance. Back then, after Kaya pushed him into the spatial crack, the cosmic movement talisman had transported him to an unknown location. Even though he left the spatial crack as quickly as he could, he was already far away from the star Brilliance plane. It was impossible for him to hurry back in a short amount of time. As a result, he simply found a meteor nearby and sat down. He adjusted his state to his peak condition. He knew that even if he hurried back to the star Brilliance plane, it would all be pointless. Kaya was already dead. He had watched her gradually turn to nothingness. He could no longer find any trace of Kaya in the entire Saints world now. His heart hurt very much. He was overwhelmed by grief. His entire mind was filled with hatred. It was so intense that it made him lose his mind. He knew about the Elder of Mountains and Seas' innate ability. No matter how far away he was, the Elder of Mountains and Seas would still be able to sense him with precision. As a result, he just sat there patiently, waiting for the Elder of Mountains and Seas to arrive. Sword spirits, if I make you fuse the swords with my current strength, are you confident about killing a Grand Prime? Jian Chen secretly asked the sword spirits. There shouldn't be a problem for those at the 5th heavenly layer and below. Of course, we aren't absolutely certain because if they sense it and flee before we've locked onto them, it'll be very difficult for us to catch up, said the sword spirits. They could feel Jian Chen's sorrow and sense Jian Chen's determination. He had even accepted death. They knew Jian Chen had someone to kill, so they did not try to persuade him otherwise this time. Jian Chen nodded and no longer spoke. He fell into his thoughts again. Kaya, don't worry. I will definitely avenge you, regardless of the cost, Jian Chen swore inside. His eyes were filled with hatred towards the Elder of Mountains and Seas. Afterwards, the Anatta tower appeared in his hand. With a thought, he let out Xian Ming, who was cultivating on the 1st floor. Xian Ming, I really am sorry. I won't be able to hold up the deal we had earlier. I have to end your cultivation in the tower early, Jian Chen said apologetically. As soon as Xian Ming emerged, he discovered that something was off with Jian Chen. He asked in doubt, brother, what's wrong? Has something happened? If there's anything troubling you, just tell me. I might be able to help you. Chapter 24-24, The Truth Revealed, an extremely powerful opponent is about to arrive. He killed Kaya. I plan on throwing my life on the line to kill him so that I can avenge Kaya. He's a Grand Prime. You won't be able to help me, Jian Chen said slowly. His voice was very calm, but cold killing intent hid beneath the calmness. What? Grand Prime, Xian Ming, who originally wanted to share Jian Chen's burden, immediately dropped his mouth in shock. Xian Ming, people should be able to remain in the Tower of Radiance of your Radiant Saint Hall for long periods of time without worrying about the mist now. You should return to the Radiant Saint Hall as soon as possible, Jian Chen continued. Xian Ming sucked in a deep breath and gradually calmed himself. Jian Chen's enemy was a peak expert that could stifle him. This troubled him. He wanted to offer up his strength, but he discovered he was unable to help at all at his current level. In the end, Xian Ming clasped his fist towards Jian Chen sternly before leaving all by himself, returning to the Radiant Saint Hall. He knew he would be useless if he stayed behind. Once the Grand Prime arrived, he too would face death. His ties with Jian Chen were not particularly deep, so he obviously would not doom himself for Jian Chen's sake. After Xian Ming's departure, there was another flash within the Anatta tower. Jian Chen had also let out Qi Nishuan, who was cultivating inside. Qi Nishuan had been using the golden core of laws to cultivate on the fortune jade. Hence, as soon as she left the Anatta tower, she was torn away from the fortune jade. Her comprehension rate immediately plummeted. Perhaps she sensed what had happened around her, but Qi Nishuan's eyelashes suddenly trembled, and she opened her eyes slowly. When she opened her eyes, sharp, almost tangible sword qi condensed in them like sparks. Her gaze was piercing, but it also possessed a strange charm that was enough to enchant the souls of people. During these years, Qi Nishuan had been cultivating on the fortune jade, increasing her comprehension of the laws of the sword through the golden core of laws she inherited from Sword Master Yuan Qi. As a result, her cultivation had increased at a rapid rate, and she encountered no bottlenecks at all. Now, She had reached the peak of mid-God King, only a step away from late God King. At this moment, Qin Yixin discovered Jian Chen, who was sitting on the ground. This time, due to him removing his undisguise, she recognized him with a single glance, and her eyes immediately narrowed. Jian Chen, why would you be here? Qin Yixuan was stunned. She stared straight at Jian Chen in disbelief. When she was on planet Tianming, the first time she had learnt anything about Jian Chen's situation was from a wanted poster. It allowed her to understand just how bloody of a storm Jian Chen had created in the short time he had been in the Saints' world. He was actually responsible for the deaths of half the Supreme God Kings on the God King's throne. Back then, even regular God Kings were indomitable in her eyes, let alone Supreme God Kings. She was deeply shocked about the fact that several hundred of these Supreme God Kings who could even rival Primordial Realm experts had died because of Jian Chen. Afterwards, she believed that Jian Chen would struggle to survive after learning that two peak experts were hunting him down. She had never expected to meet Jian Chen here in an extremely sudden fashion, which was quite a joyous matter. There are some 5-colored divine crystals in there. Qin Yixuan, take these 5-colored divine crystals and take an interplanar teleportation formation nearby. Return to the Tian Yuan clan on the cloud plane. Be careful on your journey. You'll only be able to rely on yourself next. I won't be able to protect you anymore, said Jian Chen as he passed a space ring to Qin Yixuan. He did not smile at all. Kaiya's death had left him grief-stricken. Aside from hatred, there was only fury in his heart. You can't protect me anymore? Qin Yixuan broke into laughter when she heard that. She could not help but show some pride, and she said rather coldly, do I still need your protection right now? But Jian Chen, aside from what happened in the lower world, I don't think I've ever received any protection from you while I was in the Saints' world. Jian Chen was not in the mood to explain things to Qin Yixuan. He slowly closed his eyes and meditated to adjust his state. He was preparing for the final battle. Qin Yixuan seemed to connect a few matters together after saying that. She became slightly surprised, and her gaze towards Jian Chen's began to flicker. She asked with uncertainty, Jian Chen, were you that young master Chang Yang, who took me away from planet Tianming? Jian Chen nodded and said nothing else. After receiving his confirmation, Qin Yixuan was completely stunned. She looked at Jian Chen blankly as she fell into emotional turmoil. No wonder Chang Yang had suddenly called her out when he was faced with the great fortuitous encounter from Swordmaster Yun Qi, making her accept his legacy. No wonder Chang Yang provided her with all those resources in the past few years for free, without any conditions at all. As it turned out, the mysterious young master Chang Yang who might have possessed a great background was Jian Chen. Since that was you, why did you hide it from me until now? Why didn't you tell me who you were earlier? Qin Yixuan's tone gradually turned cold. She looked at Jian Chen in displeasure as she gritted her teeth. As soon as she thought of how powerless and helpless she behaved before this young master Chang Yang, in the past, she was furious. She felt like Jian Chen had properly toyed with her. Oh, right. I remember there was a woman beside you as well. She's definitely not the heavenly enchantress. Who is she? Qin Yixuan continued her questions with gritted teeth. This just happened to touch on Jian Chen's sore spot, and his face immediately showed some pain. Only now did Qin Yixuan discover Jian Chen's abnormality, having settled down from her excitement of meeting him again. She gradually became stern, and she stared at Jian Chen closely. She asked, Jian Chen, what's wrong? That person was Kaiya, but Kaiya is dead, Jian Chen said in low spirits. What? Kaiya is dead? Qin Yixuan was surprised. Although she did not have any particular ties with Kaiya, they did come from the same place after all. Qin Yixuan, you should go. Don't stay here. Kaiya's murderer is a Grand Prime. He will come here very soon. If you don't go, it'll be too late. I plan on battling it out with him to avenge Kaiya, said Jian Chen. No. It's impossible for you to be a Grand Prime's opponent. You have to leave with me. You can't do something stupid. Qi Nishuan immediately became frantic when she saw how Jian Shen was ready to die. She immediately went up to pull him. She wanted to take him away forcefully. However, sword intent radiated from Jian Shen, preventing her from approaching him. I might not necessarily die, but if you don't leave, you might never be able to leave. Don't worry about me. I know what I must do. Go to the Tian Yuan clan. There are even more people there that need your protection. After the persuasion, Qi Nishuan ended up leaving all by herself furiously. She took the 5-color divine crystals from Jian Shen and began looking for the nearest interplanar teleportation formation to go to the cloud plane. Chapter 24-25, The Prosper Plane. Heya, you should go too. If I end up dying in this battle, you'll be free. You'll be liberated. Finally, Jian Shen let out Heya. He was about to face a grand prime. He had a certain chance of killing his opponent by fusing the twin swords. Even if his opponent survived, he would be able to wound him heavily. However, he needed to prepare for the worst. Master, you won't die. You will always be my master. I will never forget the kindness you have shown me. Heya looked at Jian Shen deeply. Only he knew that despite their relationship as master and servant on the surface, Jian Shen had never treated him as a servant. He even expended a large number of precious resources to raise him to the primordial realm forcefully. Just how many people were there in the saints' world who would treat their servants so selflessly? As a result, Heya felt unforgettable gratitude towards Jian Shen. Master, it's me who's useless. I wasn't able to help you solve your problems, and I've instead weighed you down. I will wait for Master's return in the distance. Heya knelt and lowered his head deeply towards Jian Shen before leaving the meteor as well. However, he did not really leave. Instead, he sat down somewhere very far from Jian Shen, waiting for him patiently. Master, you must survive. You can't die, Heya prayed as he sat in the dark outer space. In the blink of an eye, Jian Shen had sat on the meteor for 3 days. During those 3 days, he had adjusted his vital energies to his peak. Currently, he was in his best condition. The twin swords were ready as well. As long as Jian Shen made the decision, the swords could fuse immediately and unleash devastating power. Of course, the twin swords were not the only method for Jian Shen to deal with the Elder of Mountains and Seas. In order to kill him in a single stroke, the fleshly core he obtained from the desolate plain became a powerful trump card as well. The fleshly core was Gusta's energy reserve. The energy inside was extremely terrifying. Even when Jian Shen absorbed it, he needed to be careful, as he was afraid of breaking the balance of energy in there. Now, he had already made up his mind. If the fusion of the twin swords was unable to kill his opponent, he would break the balance in the fleshly core and make it explode. It has already been 3 days. Why isn't he here yet? Jian Shen opened his eyes slowly. His gaze was cold, and he stared through space, looking at the star Brilliance plane. According to his understanding of that expert, 3 days should have been more than enough for him to arrive here. Jian Shen continued to wait. Time passed quickly, the 4th and 5th days went by, but the Elder of Mountains and Seas still did not come looking for him. Jian Shen gradually lost his patience. He became rather agitated. He had already prepared everything. He was ready for the fusion of the twin swords and exploding Gusta's fleshly core. He had made up his mind about killing the Grand Prime, but the Grand Prime still did not come. As a result, he had nowhere to vent all this power he had prepared. Only half a month later did Jian Shen completely lose his patience. He stood up from the meteorite. He had no idea why the peak expert still had not come, but he had already waited for half a month. He did not plan on waiting any longer. Master, that expert probably isn't coming, said Heya joyously as he returned from the distance now. Jian Shen was expressionless. He did not reply. After a while of thought, he replied bitterly and eagerly, Heya, try using your innate ability and see if you can sense Kaya's position. Heya nodded and immediately used his innate ability. Master, I can't sense Kaya at all anymore. A while later, Heya shook his head. Jian Shen's heart ached from that. He became gloomy. Even though he had already guessed this, he had still been hopeful. Without a doubt, Heiya's words had destroyed that final shred of hope. I will avenge Kaya very soon. Since he's not coming to find me, I'll go find him, Jianshan said through gritted teeth. Afterwards, he let Heiya back into the Anatta tower. He turned into a streak of light and hurried towards the closest teleportation formation that could take him to another plane. Several months later, Jianshan arrived at the nearest teleportation formation. Through consecutive teleportations, he directly made his way to the Prosper Plane. Traveling through teleportation formations was extremely fast. After several teleportations, he crossed through over a dozen planes and quite a region of the Saints' world. He arrived at his destination, the Prosper Plane. The Prosper Plane. This is the Prosper Plane. Standing in a bustling city, Jianshan looked at the people coming and going. He was gloomy. This was where he would return the Anatta Tower, the place where all his problems would end. Originally, he should have come here with Kaya, but she was already gone. Kaya's familiar face and voice only existed in his memories now. This made Jianshan's heart become hollow because he had lost a very good friend. He has made it on. He has made it on. He has actually made it on there. Sima Wuji sure is impressive. He only broke through to late God King less than a century ago, and he hasn't even reached the utmost peak yet, but he can actually make it onto the God King's throne. Sima Wuji is the prodigy of the Sima clan. It only makes sense for him to be able to make it onto the God King's throne so soon. As Jianshan stood gloomily, a series of cries rang out nearby. The area up ahead had already become packed. Many cultivators gathered there such that the entire square was basically watertight. A transparent flight of stairs wounded up above everyone's heads. The steps contained the truths of the world as if they were condensed from the ways. They contained the power of the world. At the end of the steps, several thousand meters up, a huge throne hovered. At this moment, a young man in golden and violet robes sat on the throne. The throne was not easy to sit on, contrary to what it seemed. When the late God King young man sat on the throne, he seemed to experience a great pressure and test at all times, causing his body to constantly tremble. His face darkened and paled, constantly changing in complexion. Jianshan stood where he was and sucked in a deep breath to control his emotions. He also looked at the huge throne in the sky. He obviously knew what the throne was. It was the renowned God King's throne in the Saints' world. The God King's throne was widespread across the 49 great plains of the Saints' world. They had existed for an extremely lengthy amount of time. No one knew when they were created. However, across the entire Saints' world and the many God Kings, all the people who could make it on there would be glorified. As long as they managed to engrave their name on the God King's throne, they would immediately possess the honor of a supreme God King. They would glorify their ancestors. It was a representation of status. The God King's throne only had a limited number of ranks. It only recorded the most powerful, the most talented, and the strongest 1,000 out of the countless God Kings across the entire Saints' world. As long as someone was able to engrave their name onto the God King's throne, even if they ranked towards the bottom, they would achieve great honor among all the God Kings of the Saints' world. Jianshan stood in the distance and looked at the God King's throne calmly. The God King's throne was thunderous to his ears. The first God King he had come in contact with back on the Cloud Plain, God King Duanmu, was an expert that was associated with the God King's throne. God King Duanmu never attempted the God King's throne, so he did not leave his name on there, even though his strength was on par with them. As a result, God King Duanmu was not a true supreme God King. 3 days. As long as he lasts for 3 days on there, Sima Wuji will have the right to engrave his name on the God King's throne. After that, he will become a glorious supreme God King. Don't look down on those 3 days. Although Sima Wuji is talented, it's still far too soon since he reached late God King. He definitely can't last 3 days on there. As long as he's on the God King's throne, he will face the tests from the God King's throne at all times. There are quite a few people who can make it onto the God King's throne in the Saints' world, but there are only so many people who end up leaving their names behind. whether Sima Wuji can leave his name on there will be up to whether he can surpass the last ranked Supreme God King on the throne. The rankings are already full, so if he wants his name to appear there, he must force down the person who ranks last. Many cultivators discussed around the God King's throne. They understood it extremely well. Jian Shen stared at the back of God King's throne. With his eyes, he could clearly see a stone tablet that contained the power of ways on the huge throne. The throne was covered with names. From top to bottom, there just happened to be 1,000 of them, no more, no less. These 1,000 names were not permanent. Instead, they would move around constantly. Once an expert on the God King's throne broke through to the primordial realm or died, their name would immediately vanish from the God King's throne. Or perhaps a new Supreme God King would appear and make their way into the rankings, pushing down the Supreme God King who ranked last. Jian Shen glanced past the ranking. There was no one he was familiar with among the 1,000 names. Qing Shan, who ranked first in the past, had vanished from it. Jian Shen knew that Qing Shan must have reached the primordial realm. He would not have died. Moreover, Shui Yunlan's name had vanished as well. The person who ranked first now was Zhu Wen. Jian Shen knew Zhu Wen. He had come into conflict with him back in the Neptunian Divine Palace. Jian Shen glanced down. He did not find Ming Dong's name on there. Jian Shen was not surprised by this at all because even though the God King's throne was a set of rankings that all God Kings looked up to, some people did not care about fame and would not attempt it. He was one of them. Just like that, Jian Shen stood there for 3 days. 3 days was neither long or short to mortals, but it was only the blink of an eye to a primordial realm expert like Jian Shen. Sima Wuji succeeded in remaining on the God King's throne for 3 days. He used his consciousness like a blade and left behind his name there. Sima Wuji successfully became an expert of the God King's throne. His name hung high up at last place. As soon as he engraved his name, Sima Wuji rolled off like he had lost all his strength. He was frail. Cheers immediately rang out below. Many cultivators cheered for Sima Wuji. Looking at his name at the bottom of the God King's throne, Sima Wuji squeezed out a happy smile from his pale face. He would be favored even more by his clan now that he was a Supreme God King. However, at this moment, the names on the God King's throne changed. His name that he had just engraved on the throne had been pushed down by a foreign name. Jian Shen happened to notice this change in rankings as he looked at the God King's throne. However, when he saw the name that appeared at the bottom, he was stunned. He was extremely familiar with the name that had pushed Sima Wuji off the rankings. Qi Nishuan. The name that appeared on the God King's throne was actually Qi Nishuan's. The Supreme God King, Qi Nishuan. Qi Nishuan hasn't reached late God King yet, right? Jian Shen was stunned as he stared at Qi Nishuan's name. Qi Nishuan had separated from him recently. If nothing went wrong, she should have made it onto the cloud plane already. However, as soon as he thought about the legacy that Qi Nishuan had obtained, everything made sense. Qi Nishuan had inherited the legacy of Swordmaster Yun Qi. The legacy also contained the secret techniques that Swordmaster Yun Qi had left behind in the past. It only made sense for her to possess her current accomplishments. This was because according to Jian Shen's guesses, the 8 experts he had met in the underground cavern were late Grand Primes at the very least. Even the weakest late Grand Primes were at the 7th heavenly layer. Swordmaster Yun Qi should have been one of the more outstanding late Grand Primes. Qi Nishuan had obtained his legacy, so her future accomplishments would be evident. Qi Nishuan. Now there's a Qi Nishuan. Which plane does Qi Nishuan belong to? What a pity, what a pity. Sima Wuji just made it onto the God King's throne, but he was pushed down by a Supreme God King called Qi Nishuan. Qi Nishuan must be more powerful than Sima Wuji, or she wouldn't have replaced him. The people in the surrounding side. All of them felt pity for Sima Wuji. Sima Wuji was bitter and in low spirits. Heavens! This Qi Nishuan is actually still climbing upward. At this moment, another cry rang out. Everyone looked over, and as expected, Qi Nishuan's name surpassed rival after rival, rising up from rank 1000. This meant that the strength she possessed when she attempted the God King's throne was greater than what these people possessed when they recorded their names in the past. Jian Chen's attention was drawn over by Qing Yishuan's accomplishments as well. He looked at her name and watched it rapidly surpass people after people. He felt happy for her. Finally, Qing Yishuan's name stopped at rank 950. She has actually surpassed 50 people. Who is this Qing Yishuan? She has made it so high up the God King's throne on her first attempt. I wonder if she's a peak God King. If she's a peak God King, it would mean that she has very little room for improvement left. Her name won't rise too much in the future. However, if she isn't at the peak yet, she will still have a lot of room for improvement. A similar God King's throne stood in a bustling city within the central region of the Cloud Plain. An alluring beauty in azure robes sat on it right now. Extremely sharp sword qi radiated from her. The sword qi was so powerful that it directly expanded beyond the range of the God King's throne, filling the entire city. It surprised many of the God Kings gathered there. It was already packed below the God King's throne. Many cultivators gathered there, raising their heads to look at Qing Yishuan who sat up there. They all cried out. Surely she isn't Qing Yishuan, right? She directly went from 1000th to 950th in a single breath, but that doesn't make sense. She only seems to be a mid-God king. Heavens, she has made it onto the rankings as a mid-God king. Just how terrifying is her true battle prowess? Quick, contact the clan. An outstanding supreme God king has appeared here. She has made it onto the rankings as a mid-God king. When she becomes a peak God king, what rank will she reach then? People from various clans around the Cloud Plain naturally gathered around the God King's throne. As soon as they saw Qing Yishuan make it into the rankings as a mid-God king, their eyes lit up. They immediately passed on this news to their clan. The God King's throne only recorded the strongest God Kings, so as long as someone made it into the rankings, even if they were only last place, it would be enough to make many clans and organizations try to rope them in. Not to mention how Qing Yishuan had made it into the rankings as a mid-God king, so the potential she demonstrated was so great that it was enough to interest all the organizations on the Cloud Plain. If a prodigy like that had been roped in, they would become a pillar of support once they matured. Immediately, the name of the Supreme God King, Qing Yishuan, spread to the ears of the people in charge of the various organizations. What? She's only a mid-God king, and she made it onto the God King's throne? Moreover, she ranks at 950th? Are you sure, mid-God king? Really? What are you staring for? Hurry up and send people to investigate which organization Qing Yishuan belongs to, and then do all that we can to rope her in. What are you reporting a prodigy like that for? Rope her in immediately without even thinking. If she's willing to join the clan will nurture her with everything the clan possesses. Similar voices rang out in various clans across the Cloud Plain. As a matter of fact, this news even reached the two dominant forces of the Cloud Plain, the Righteous Alliance and the Four Symbols Alliance. Immediately, the people responsible for the day-to-day affairs in the alliances sent people to the God King's throne. The teleportation formations near the God King's throne constantly flickered. People arrived there through their teleportation formations. They were from various large clans, and all of them stared at the rather slim figure that sat on the God King's throne. They all murmured. Is that woman Qing Yishuan? She really is beautiful. Unknowingly, Qing Yishuan had already become the center of attention. However, Qing Yishuan did not sense any of this. She sat there without moving at all with her eyes closed. She had no idea that she had shaken up the Cloud Plain. Only half a day later did Qing Yishuan open her eyes slowly and glide down from the God King's throne. Her name had risen from 950th to 940th. She truly was strong since she could rank so high, ranking above so many peak God Kings as a mid-God King. Fellow Qin Yixuang, we are from the Zihao Empire of the Eastern region. I was wondering if you would grant us the honor and come visit our Zihao Empire. The Zihao Empire of the Eastern region was an eternal empire. They had chaotic primes and once stood supreme in the Eastern region. Even after the changes on the Cloud Plain, the Zihao Empire was still a peak organization in the eastern region, and they had the right to state what they thought. Fellow Qingyuan, I'm from the imperial family of the Jinjian Empire of the eastern region. Under my father, the emperor's orders, I've specially come to invite you to our Jinjian Empire as a guest, said an old man. He was a primordial realm expert, a first heavenly layer infinite prime. The Jinjian Empire placed an unbelievable amount of focus on Qin Yishuan by sending a primordial realm expert to invite her over. Afterwards, representatives from various organizations stated their identities. They either invited Qin Yishuan over, or they directly asked about her origins. They used various methods to try to rope her in. There were stronger and weaker organizations among them. The weaker were organizations with only infinite primes, while the stronger were like the Zihao Empire and the Jinjian Empire. Humph. Suddenly, a cold snort rang out. It was thunderous, and it immediately silenced everyone. An imposing young man directly ignored the fact that flying was forbidden in the city and stood high in the air. He said, "Woman, I'm Hu Wei, the Lord of the Battle Hall from the Four Symbols Alliance. With your potential, you will definitely receive the full support of our Four Symbols Alliance. It'll only be a matter of time before you reach the peak." Qin Yishuan immediately frowned when she heard this person mention the Four Symbols Alliance. Although she still did not understand the situation on the Cloud Plane very well, she had heard about the two organizations in control of the Cloud Plane. Neither of them was in existence she could afford to offend. Humph, is your Four Symbols Alliance supposed to be impressive? Aren't you just the cowardly remnants of the Tian Empire that we've chased to the southern region? Since when did you become so arrogant? A scornful voice rang out after Hu Wei spoke. An elegant, handsome young man in white robes walked over from a distance steadily with a fan in his hand. He looked at Hu Wei like he was challenging him. Hu Wei's face sank slightly when he saw the white-robed young man. He barked coldly, "Tong Tian, it's you. If it weren't for the Tong family behind you, I would only need a flick of my finger to kill you, you mere overgod." Tong Tian curled his lip scornfully and replied, "Hu Wei, don't you think your nonsense called the Lord of the Battle Hall or something is impressive? If it weren't for the fact that you have the Four Symbols Alliance behind you, I would only need a single word to have you disintegrated. Your so-called occupation of Lord of the Battle Hall is T in front of me. Why don't you run back to the southern region obediently? The central region isn't a place you should come to." Tong Tian's words made Hu Wei so angry that he could no longer reply. His face darkened and paled. He was furious. However, he did not dare to lay his hands on Tong Tian. Although he had no need to take Tong Tian, who was only an overgod, seriously at all, Tong Tian's identity was significant. He was the most beloved descendant of the ancestor of the Tong family, Tong Wuming. In the end, Hu Wei looked at Qin Yishuan who stood in front of the God King's throne. Tong Tian's appearance and scornful remarks had put him in a bad mood. With a cold expression, he asked, "Qin Yishuan, are you willing to join our Four Symbols Alliance?" Qin Yishuan became troubled. Originally, she only wanted to attempt the God King's throne and return to the Tian Yuan clan as a supreme God King so that she could elevate the fame and status of the Tian Yuan clan. In the end, she underestimated the weight that the God King's throne held in the Saints' world. She never thought that a single ranking would make her famous and even draw over the people from the Four Symbols Alliance. Not just that, Tong Tian, who seemed to come from a large clan, had appeared as well. Tong Tian's appearance had put Hu Wei in a rather embarrassing situation, while the reason why Hu Wei had been angered by Tong Tian arose from her in the first place. If she did not accept Hu Wei's invitation, she might end up offending the Four Symbols Alliance. If she was alone, she would not care. If she offended them, then so be it. She could just leave the Cloud Plane if worst came to worst. However, the Tian Yuan clan founded by Jian Chen was here as well. If she offended one of the two major powers of the Cloud Plane right from the start, it would be extremely detrimental to the Tian Yuan clan. After a moment of hesitation, Qin Yishuan clasped her fist and said, "Thank you for your kind intentions, but I already have a clan. It would be inappropriate for me to join another organization." Hu Wei's face sank from that. His voice gradually turned cold as he asked, "May I ask which clan you come from?" Hu Wei was already in a bad mood. Coupled with Qin Yishuan's declination, he immediately became furious. He secretly swore that no matter which clan Qin Yixua belonged to, he would teach them a lesson. The Four Symbols Alliance was one of the two major powers of the Cloud Plain. They stood against the Righteous Alliance and were a colossal existence on the Cloud Plain. Aside from the Tian Yuan clan in the southern region, there really was no organization that the Four Symbols Alliance could not afford to offend. Hu Wei did not think too much about Qin Yishuan's identity as a Supreme God King. Being a Supreme God King was only a representation of potential. It did not mean they would be able to reach the peak of their potential. They might end up dying halfway. Such a thing had happened not too long ago. Half of the names on the God King's throne had directly vanished. Chapter 24-28, The Deterrence of the Tian Yuan clan. Hu Wei's forcefulness angered Qin Yishuan slightly. Although Hu Wei was a primordial realm expert, he was only a first heavenly layer infinite prime. He had only broken through recently. Although there was still a certain gap between infinite primes and her current level of cultivation, Qin Yishuan did not fear him at all. This was because she had obtained Sword Master Yun Qi's legacy. There were several extremely powerful secret techniques within the golden core of laws from Sword Master Yun Qi. They possessed startling power. If she used them, she could instantly kill opponents of the same level. She could even handle those who had recently stepped into the primordial realm. However, Qin Yishuan dreaded the Four Symbols Alliance behind Hu Wei very much, so she could only endure his aggressiveness. What does that have to do with you? Hu Wei, don't forget that you were a regular God King who could not even make it onto the God King's throne in the past. Even if you've reached the primordial realm now, there's not a great future ahead of you. You're nowhere close to any of the Supreme God Kings who have made it onto the God King's throne in terms of status and future, said Tong Tian as he snickered to one side. The Righteous Alliance and Four Symbols Alliance had never been on particularly good terms, so he did not hold back at all. Afterwards, Tong Tian looked at Qin Yishuan and said politely, "I come from the Tong family of the central region. Aside from the southern region, all the regions of the Cloud Plain are under our Righteous Alliance's control. As a result, there is no need for you to worry about the Four Symbols Alliance here at all. They won't dare to do anything reckless." Tong Tian ignored Hu Wei's darkened face and continued, "Of course, you are welcome to join our Tong family. As long as you become a part of our Tong family, even the higher echelon of their Four Symbols Alliance would have to properly think of the consequences of offending our Righteous Alliance, let alone a mere lord of the battle hall. Thank you for your kind intentions, but I already have a clan, so it's inappropriate for me to join other organizations," said Qin Yishuan, declining once again. "How about this?" Tong Tian did not try to force anything on her. After a moment of thought, he continued, "Why don't you tell me which clan you belong? I can let the people in the Alliance keep an eye out for you, just in case the Four Symbols Alliance decides to make trouble for you." The Four Symbols Alliance consists of the remnants of the Tian Empire. They tend to do everything they can to get what they want, so it's best to be wary of them. Qin Yishuan hesitated when she heard that. According to her understanding, the clan founded by Jian Shen was only a small, nameless clan in the Saints' world. Perhaps they did not have another God King aside from Jian Shen in the entire clan. After all, she knew Jian Shen's origins extremely well. Although Jian Shen was the human sovereign on the Tian Yuan clan, the Saints' world was no resource-lacking Tian Yuan continent. How long had it been since he came to the Saints' world? It was impossible for him to create a powerful clan in such a short amount of time. If she revealed that she came from a tiny Tian Yuan clan, probably both the Four Symbols Alliance and the Tong family could make the entire clan vanish with a single breath. As a result, Qin Yishuan felt troubled. She had no idea whether she should tell them. After all, the Tian Yuan clan was just too small. If it raised the attention of the dominant organizations on the Cloud Plain too soon, it would not be a good matter. However, when she realized that both the Tong family and the Four Symbols Alliance could discover that she came from the Tian Yuan clan with the slightest investigation, she stopped hesitating. She said, My clan is a small place called the Tian Yuan clan in the Pingtian Empire of the southern region. It's nothing impressive, so the Righteous and Four Symbols Alliance naturally will not know about it. Qin Yishuan had already become prepared for the worst when she mentioned the Tian Yuan clan. As soon as Hu Wei wanted to overwhelm the Tian Yuan clan, she would lead the people of the Tian Yuan clan against the threat and fend off Hu Wei. If they really ran out of choices, she would join the Righteous Alliance to fend off the Four Symbols Alliance. However, what confused Qin Yishuan was that as soon as she mentioned the Tian Yuan clan, both Tong Tian and Hu Wei revealed extremely strange expressions. It was not just the two of them. Even the other representatives of various organizations in the surroundings revealed rather interesting expressions. What did you say? You're from the Tian Yuan clan? Really? Hu Wei's face changed. He stared straight at Qin Yishuan, and he became extremely stern. The Tian Yuan clan was the only organization on the Cloud Plain that the Four Symbols Alliance did not dare to provoke. Hu Wei had never thought that a person he met on the street would actually come from the Tian Yuan clan. Sure, he was a primordial realm expert and the Lord of the Battle Hall in the Four Symbols Alliance. However, if he actually offended someone important in the Tian Yuan clan, the people in charge of the Four Symbols Alliance would skin him alive. You're actually from the Tian Yuan clan? Who are Jian Chen and Ming Dong of the Tian Yuan clan to you? Tong Tian snapped his folding fan shut and stared at Qin Yishuan with brimming interest. Now, Qin Yishuan was the one in doubt. According to her understanding, the Tian Yuan clan should have been a small clan that did not hold any importance at all. However, it seemed like a completely different case from everyone's reactions and expressions. This young master of great renown actually knew Jian Chen and Ming Dong, which surprised her very much. Jian Chen is my good friend, while Ming Dong comes from the same homeland as me, said Qin Yishuan. Her relationship with Ming Dong was nowhere near as close as her relationship with Jian Chen, but they did come from the Tian Yuan clan. As such, she could only say that they shared the same homeland. Tong Tian came up with an evil idea and said strangely, I know Hu Wei's personality and temperament extremely well. When you declined Hu Wei's invitation earlier, you've completely offended Hu Wei. According to his personality, he will definitely seek revenge. He might even use the power of the Four Symbols Alliance to destroy your clan. As a result, when you return, you have to explain this to the people of the Tian Yuan clan so that they can handle this appropriately. Qin Yishuan's face changed slightly when she heard that, but she seemed to sense that something was off. Shut up, Tong Tian. Quit spewing bullsh*t. However, before she could think too much about it, Hu Wei had cut Tong Tian off with a darkened expression. Afterwards, he changed from his cold and haughty manner drastically and clasped his fist towards Qin Yishuan with a face full of smiles. Lady, ignore Tong Tian's blabbering. The Four Symbols Alliance is the Tian Yuan clan's best friend, the best neighbor, so how is it possible for us to do anything to the Tian Yuan clan? What happened before was all a misunderstanding, so please don't take it to heart. If I have offended you in any way, I will make it up to you in the future. Qin Yishuan stared at Hu Wei blankly. The haughty Lord of Battle Hall of the Four Symbols Alliance was now apologizing to her submissively. The drastic change in behavior left Qin Yishuan at a loss. She had no idea what had just happened. Is the Tian Yuan clan a peak organization that even the Four Symbols Alliance does not dare to offend? This thought suddenly appeared in Qin Yishuan's head, but she quickly shook her head. She refused to believe it. Are you looking to return to the Tian Yuan clan? Allow me to lead the way. Hu Wei's attitude changed completely. He was very enthusiastic, leading the way for Qin Yishuan with great politeness. Chapter 24-29, Returning the Anatta Tower afterwards. The doubtful Qin Yishuan headed to the southern region through a teleportation formation under Hu Wei's enthusiastic and warm treatment. At the same time, on the distant Prosper Plain, Jian Shen stood beneath the God King's throne and stared at Qin Yishuan's name quietly as it rose to 940th. He sank into his thoughts. He understood that from the moment she received Swordmaster Yunqi's legacy, she had begun to rise up. Although he had no idea just how great her future accomplishments would be, it would definitely be more than this. Dismissing his thoughts, Jian Shen no longer paid any more attention to the God King's throne. He turned around and disappeared into the crowd. If it were not for what happened on the Star Brilliance plane and Kaya was still present, he might have been happy for Qing Yishuan. However, all he felt was fury and hatred now. He could not lighten up at all. Jian Shen was in no hurry to go to the heavenly palace of Bisheng located in the central region of the Prosper Plain. First, he rented an estate within the bustling city. The estate was quite large, and it was covered with formations, making it extremely tough. Jian Shen had only managed to rent it with 5-colored divine crystals. A secret room deep underground was located in the estate. Jian Shen activated all the formations in the estate and sat down in the underground room. The damaged Anatta tower appeared before him quietly. The sword slashes on there stood out. Jian Shen just sat there, staring at the Anatta tower. The Anatta tower had come from the sea realm in the world of the Tian Yuan continent. He had faced many disasters along the way, and quite a few of them had been blocked by the Anatta tower. In other words, he definitely would not be here today if it were not for the Anatta tower. As a result, he felt some attachment to the Anatta tower. But now, the Anatta tower was about to leave him. However, Jian Shen was not reluctant to part with it. The Anatta tower was powerful, but it was already damaged and extremely difficult to refine. It would be impossible for him to unleash its full power. As his strength increased in the future, the assistance the Anatta tower could provide would only reduce. Moreover, the Anatta tower was an object of desire, eyed by all people. It had caused him quite a few problems in the past few years. As a matter of fact, Kaya had died because of it. This was why he felt no reluctance in returning the Anatta tower to the heavenly palace of Bisheng. The most precious thing about the Anatta tower is the slashes on it. These slashes were left behind by the greatest expert of the immortals world in the past, the Nirvanic Sword Immortal. Every single slash contains the will of a sword god. If I could just comprehend a sliver of it, I would definitely benefit, thought Jian Shen. He stared at the sword slashes on it for a while before entering the Anatta tower with a flash. The Anatta tower had a total of 9 floors. The 9 floors were like 9 worlds. However, each world was damaged. A strand of sword chi several tens of thousand meters long hovered at the end of each world, within the shattered space, preventing the 9 worlds from automatically healing. Jian Shen arrived at the edge of the world on the first floor. Before him was dark nothingness. It was the destroyed world. He sat down and closed his eyes, beginning an attempt to comprehend the sword chi left there by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt. In the past, he was unable to comprehend these strands of sword chi at all due to his limited strength and cultivation, but he was already a sword immortal now, a primordial realm expert. The Anatta tower was about to leave him, so he wanted to try one last time. However, very soon, Jian Shen's body shook, and his face became rather pale. He opened his eyes, and he stared at the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt's sword chi with mixed feelings. He sighed powerlessly. The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt was just too powerful. As soon as Jian Shen tried to comprehend it, he felt the sword chi spring to life and stab into his soul, causing splitting pain in his head. It was like his soul was being torn to pieces. It still doesn't work. I probably need to reach Sword Sage at the very least to comprehend this strand of sword chi. After all, these strands of sword chi left behind by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt in the past were all used for suppression and killing. Every single strand contains extremely great offensive power. They're nowhere near as gentle as imprints used to pass on laws. Jian Shen felt great pity. He had only broken through to Sword Immortal recently, so he was just too far away from Sword Sage. Afterwards, he arrived on the 9th floor and stowed the Fortune Jade away. In the end, he left with the empty Anatta tower, arriving in the central region of the Prosper Plain through a teleportation formation. The central region was where the heavenly palace of Bisheng stood. The heavenly palace of Bisheng held supreme authority on the Prosper Plain. No one dared to defy them. They all held the heavenly palace of Bisheng in supreme regard. Jian Shen arrived before the heavenly palace of Bisheng on this day. From a distance, he could see a familiar, golden hall. The hall stood there silently like it reached towards the sky. A majestic might made all the ways of the world seem to revolve around it. As a result, the divine hall seemed like the only existence in the world. Is this the heavenly palace of Bisheng? It's exactly the same as the projection of the divine hall I saw on the 9th floor in the past. Jianshan felt extremely shocked as he looked at the majestic divine hall up ahead. He was a primordial realm expert, so his senses were extremely great. Not only did he feel insignificant as he stood before the divine hall, but he also discovered to his surprise that as he rapidly approached the divine hall, his grasp and ability to sense the way of the sword became weaker and weaker. It was as if the existence of the divine hall had suppressed all the ways, where no cultivator could use the ways they comprehended as they wished before it. State your identity. At this moment, a divine general in golden armor appeared before Jianshan silently, blocking his path. The divine general was a god king, but his presence was so powerful that it was no weaker than the supreme god kings from the god king's throne. The heavenly palace of Bisheng was one of the most powerful organizations in the saints' world. Who knows how many experts wanted to join the heavenly palace of Bisheng in the saints' world. Even if they became a divine general, it would be a great honor. As a result, every single divine general of the heavenly palace of Bisheng would be picked from countless prodigies. Every single one of them possessed extremely great battle prowess. Coupled with the heavenly palace of Bisheng's nurturing, they could claim to be invincible among the same level of cultivation. I've come to return the Anatta Tower. Jianshan directly took out the Anatta Tower. The eyes of the divine general immediately narrowed when he saw the Anatta Tower in Jianshan's hands. He glanced at Jianshan deeply and said, "Come with me. I'll take you to Sir Bisheng." Chapter 24:30. The First Majesty. The grand heavenly palace of Bisheng was extremely quiet inside. Jianshan followed the divine general through the structure. He felt like the laws of the world here were as vast as the ocean. It was as if the entire heavenly palace of Bisheng was forged from the ways of the world, and everything he saw there hid the truths of the world. They contained endless mysteries as if they were created by nature itself. It really is a peak god artifact in the world. Jianshan was secretly amazed as he studied the heavenly palace of Bisheng. He had already heard that the Anatta Grand Exalt had a total of 3 treasures. They were the heavenly palace of Bisheng, the Anatta Tower, and the Fortune Jade Pedestal. The heavenly palace of Bisheng standing before him right now was a treasure at the same level as the Anatta Tower. However, the Anatta Tower was damaged, and it had been sealed up by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt Sword Chi. It no longer possessed the might that a peak god artifact should possess. As a result, the heavenly palace of Bisheng invoked far more shock in Jianshan's heart. "Sir, Jianshan has been brought over," said the divine general respectfully. He stopped within a majestic hall within the heavenly palace of Bisheng before speaking to the empty hall. "You are dismissed." An obscure voice rang out from the empty hall. It sounded like an old man who was brimming with energy. "Yes, sir." The divine general bowed politely before backing away. Jianshan clutched the Anatta Tower as he stood there calmly. He looked around, but he did not see a single person. "Are you that Jianshan who ran amok through the entire world with Master's treasure?" The old voice rang out once again. However, it was no longer obscure this time. Instead, it rang out from behind Jianshan. Jianshan was startled. He immediately looked back. A white-robed old man had appeared behind him at a certain time. The old man was completely snow-white. His gaze was profound, seemingly possessing the power of galaxies. He did seem slightly sage-like. He had appeared behind Jianshan silently. Even with Jianshan's current strength, he was unable to sense the old man's existence. When his soul swept over, he found nothing as well. It was like the old man's existence could only be found by sight. All other senses were useless. "Stop searching. You're too weak, so it's impossible for you to sense my existence. Become a Grand Prime first if you want to do that," said the old man rather proudly as he stroked his long beard. "Senior, you are?" Jianchen clasped his fist and asked cautiously. I am Bisheng, the hall spirit of this divine hall, said the old man. So it's Senior Bisheng. Greetings from Junior Jianchen. Jianchen clasped his fist. He glanced at Bisheng before looking at the Anatta tower in his hand. He hesitated. He had come here to return the Anatta tower, but in the end, he only met was an artifact spirit. He was obviously rather unwilling to hand over something as important as the Anatta tower to an artifact spirit. Perhaps he saw Jianchen's hesitance, but Bisheng snorted gently and waved his hand. With his back to Jianchen, he said rather proudly, aside from Master and the few Majesties, I hold the greatest authority in the heavenly palace of Bisheng. If you have any demands, just tell me. Senior Bisheng, I wish to see the First Majesty. Jianchen clasped his fist. The renown of the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bisheng was as prominent as thunder to his ears. She was a supreme expert who stood at the very peak of the saint's world, an existence only second to grand exalts. Since he was going to return the Anatta tower, he needed to hand it to the First Majesty. The First Majesty was the one in charge within the heavenly palace of Bisheng. She could command everyone and was a peak expert who stunned the entire saint's world. Brat, although it's quite the merit for you to return Master's treasure, who do you think the First Majesty is? Is she someone you can see just because you want to? Bisheng said with displeasure. If I don't see the First Majesty, I won't return the Anatta tower, Jianchen said firmly. He did not back away. Although he was within the heavenly palace of Bisheng right now, where his life was in someone else's hands, he did not worry at all. The heavenly palace of Bisheng was a peak organization in the saints' world. The more colossal they were, the more they cared about their pride. The heavenly palace of Bisheng definitely had no reason to trouble him now that he had come to return the Anatta tower after so many difficulties. Kid, I've already shown you enough respect by receiving you personally. Don't demand for more than what you deserve. Bisheng frowned. He felt like he was being underestimated. Bisheng, you can go. At this moment, a pleasant but cold voice rang out. A woman slowly walked over from the other side of the hall. The woman gave off the presence of the ways, and she was shrouded by a dazzling light. Only a hazy figure was visible from the outside. Jianchen's heart immediately shuddered when he saw the woman. He was able to recognize with a single glance that the woman shrouded in light was the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bisheng, Exian. His soul had once fused with the clone of the Samsaric immortal Exalt in the Neptunian divine palace and clashed with the First Majesty of the heavenly palace of Bisheng from the Samsaric immortal Exalt's point of view. At that time, he had been deeply stunned by the First Majesty's strength. The Neptunian divine palace was a high-grade god artifact. Its defenses were astonishing, but even with its many powerful formations, it had not been able to stop the First Majesty. She used an extremely short amount of time to get through the formations and infiltrate the interior, dispersing the Samsaric immortal Exalt's clone. Although it was only a clone of the Samsaric immortal Exalt, possessing strength nowhere close to the original body, it was still a grand Exalt's clone after all. All of this demonstrated the terrifying strength the First Majesty possessed. As a result, Jianchen felt his heart tighten as he faced the First Majesty. After all, the person before him was only a step away from becoming a grand Exalt. As long as she took that step, she would become a sovereign of the world. This tower is Master's treasure. Originally, it was lost in a lower world, so it was impossible to peer into its location. It would have been extremely difficult to search for it. You've done the heavenly palace of Bisheng a great service by bringing the tower here. Tell me, what do you want? Said the First Majesty. She slowly raised her slender hand, and with a casual gesture, the Anatta tower in Jianchen's hand landed on hers. Jianchen was unable to stop the Anatta tower's departure at all. May I ask what I can exchange the merit for? Jianchen asked. Exian held the Anatta tower in her hand and studied it carefully. It was like she was looking at the sword slashes on there. She said leisurely, various peak cultivation methods, ancient secret techniques, heavenly resources, and cultivation resources. As long as you can mention it, our heavenly palace of Bisheng will be able to give it to you. If you want to, you can even use some of your merit to join our heavenly palace of Bisheng, or even move your clan to the Prosper Plane to be placed under our protection. It had to be mentioned that the conditions Xian offered were extremely tempting. The last condition she offered was even enough to drive a few peak organizations insane. So many peak experts did everything that they could to find the Anatta Tower on the desolate plain because they wanted to return the Anatta Tower to the heavenly palace of Bisheng and use the merit of their service to benefit their clans. Conflict was omnipresent in the Saints' world. Everlasting empires were not truly everlasting, while peak clans could also face destruction. Even grand primes could die. Only by joining one of the greatest organizations in the Saints' world and receiving their protection would they be able to ensure that their clan would continue to exist, without any worries about other enemies. This was why all the peak experts fought over the Anatta Tower. "I want the First Majesty to kill someone for me," Jian Shen said with killing intent. "Kill someone?" Xian was surprised. "That's right, a grand prime." Jian Shen slid his finger through the air, and a strand of sword chi shot out. He used it to depict the Elder of Mountains and Seas. He wanted to avenge Kaya, but the Elder of Mountains and Seas was so powerful that even if he fused the twin swords, he was not completely confident about killing the Elder of Mountains and Seas. Moreover, he would end up exposing himself. As a result, it would be best if he did not expose the twin swords. The safest method was to ask the First Majesty to take action. With the First Majesty's strength, killing the Elder of Mountains and Seas was a piece of cake. Chapter 24:31. Meeting Su Ran again. Xian glanced past the Elder of Mountains and Seas casually. Although there were not a lot of grand primes in the Saints' world, they were not necessarily few in number either. The Elder of Mountains and Seas' strength clearly was not enough to catch Xian's attention. As a result, she did not know who the Elder of Mountains and Seas was. However, she would not take personal action and kill someone for Jian Shen either. She declined without any hesitation. "I won't kill anyone for you. Although you've done us a great service by bringing back Master's treasure, don't even think about using that to turn our heavenly palace of Bisheng into your butchering knife. Change your condition." The First Majesty was very clear. Without a doubt, Jian Shen had committed a great service by bringing back the Anatta Tower, but he could only get some cultivation resources or the heavenly palace of Bisheng's protection in exchange. He definitely could not turn the heavenly palace of Bisheng into his weapon to kill or target people for him. Jian Shen could obviously tell what the First Majesty was trying to say. He knew inviting an expert from the heavenly palace of Bisheng to kill someone for him was not possible, so he no longer dwelled on the matter. He continued, "There's a grand prime who can find me through his innate ability. I want to use some of my merit to exchange for a method to avoid being found through these innate abilities." "All right. The heaven-splitting ancestor may lay his hands on me. I hope the heavenly palace of Bisheng can stop the heaven-splitting ancestor if he comes for me, no problem. The heaven-splitting ancestor will no longer eye you in the future. I want some cultivation methods, battle skills, and ancient secret techniques, along with some cultivation resources, sure. Bisheng will transport you to the Legacy Hall in a while. Feel free to choose whatever you want from the first and second levels. We will deduct everything from your merit according to the level of the cultivation methods and their preciousness. I want something that can kill grand primes. Do you think you can find treasures that can kill grand primes wherever you look? You can only choose items from the first and second levels of the Legacy Hall," Xian said coldly. Very soon, Jian Shen and Xian agreed on the terms, and he was sent to the Legacy Hall by the artifact spirit. Jian Shen did not know how many levels there were to the Legacy Hall, but he could only move through the bottom two. The first level held various cultivation methods, battle skills, and secret techniques. The second level held some formations and god artifacts. Jian Shen picked over 100 cultivation methods, battle skills, and secret techniques from the first floor. They ranged in quality. The only regret was that the best cultivation methods on the first floor only reached peak chaotic prime. These cultivation methods and secret techniques were useless to him because he cultivated the chaotic body. As a result, he asked the divine generals of the heavenly palace of Bishing to personally deliver these items and some cultivation resources to the Tian Yuan clan on the Cloud Plain. He had prepared these items for the Tian Yuan clan. The Tian Yuan clan had only been founded recently. Their heritage was simply too thin. The resources from the heavenly palace of Bishing could allow the Tian Yuan clan to strengthen faster. Afterwards, he arrived on the second level of the Legacy Hall. He moved through the various formation discs and chose carefully. 9 Tribulations Incineration Formation. Jianshen stopped before a set of formation banners. He looked at their explanation, and his eyes gradually lit up. The banners could create a powerful formation that used invisible flames to incinerate the soul. It attacked the souls of enemies such that they would not be able to guard against it. It could trap experts below the 7th heavenly layer of chaotic prime within them and slowly kill them off. It can actually kill experts below the 7th heavenly layer of chaotic prime. Jianshen was immediately interested as killing intent radiated from his body. This set of formation banners might be of some use in avenging Kaya. At the same time, it was the strongest set of formation banners he had seen on the second level so far, so he stowed them away without any hesitation at all. However, he only found a single set of formation banners as powerful as the 9 Tribulations Incineration Formation. He felt that this was a pity. Jianshen only took a single item from the second level of the Legacy Hall. He was still selling god artifacts, so he obviously did not need to waste his merit on items like that. The Tian Yuan clan temporarily did not need god artifacts either. Several hours later, Jianshen left the Legacy Hall and returned to the Majestic Hall. Of course, the Anatta Tower was a peak god artifact after all. Even if Jianshen exchanged for everything he had collected so far, he would only use up half of his merit from returning the Anatta Tower. I'll save up the remaining half of the merit for now. I'll come back to exchange it when I need something in the future, Jianshen said to the First Majesty after a moment of thought. Originally, he wanted to ask the heavenly palace of Bishing to protect his sister, Changyang Mingyue, until she recovered her strength. However, as soon as he thought about the information he learnt from Shui Yunlan, how her sister had established grievances with the First Majesty in the past, he could only give up on it. In the past, the First Majesty had been suppressed by his sister, Changyang Mingyue. Although he did not know if the First Majesty held grudges, he definitely would not risk his sister's life. Before long, Jianshen emerged from the heavenly palace of Bisheng. The Anatta Tower was no longer with him, but he did gain a simple, jade pendant. It was engraved with the pattern of ways. The pendant came from the First Majesty. It could prevent innate abilities such as the Elder of Mountains and Seas ability from finding him. Moreover, a large quantity of cultivation resources was now in his space ring as well. He did not ask the heavenly palace of Bishing to protect the Tian Yuan clan. He knew about his identity, so he did not wish for the Tian Yuan clan and the heavenly palace of Bishing to have ties that ran too deep. One day in the future, he might take the Tian Yuan clan and leave the Saints' world. If the heavenly palace of Bishing protected the Tian Yuan clan, it might complicate matters. Jianshen, I've waited a very long time here for you. You've finally arrived on the Prosper Plain. At this moment, an old voice rang out from in front of him. Jianshen looked up and saw someone familiar standing before him. She was an old woman. She wore coarse clothes and seemed rather hunchbacked. Her grizzled hair ran down her back messily. Even though she seemed very old, where her face was filled with wrinkles, her eyes were extremely bright. They were brimming with energy as if they possessed the vast power of the world. The old woman was Su Ran, the person he had separated with on planet Tianming. Jianshen studied Su Ran, and a gleam of light immediately flashed through his eyes. He clasped his fist and said, "Congratulations on recovering and becoming a chaotic prime again. I was only able to recover my cultivation, return to my peak condition, and even improve from there because of your origin of ways," Su Ran said calmly. She stared straight at Jianshen. Her gaze seemed deep as if she could see through him completely. "Jianshen, I can sense killing intent, very strong killing intent, within you," Su Ran continued. "Kaya is dead." Jianshen was grief-stricken. Su Ran had already adapted to the concept of life and death long ago. Her face did not change much at all. She only sighed gently and said, I am unable to repay you for the origin of ways. If you want revenge, I can help you. Chapter 2432. The Myriad Bone Guild. Jian Chen did not lighten up at all when Su Ran offered to help. He shook his head gently and said, the person who killed Kaya was a Grand Prime. A Grand Prime. As expected, Su Ran frowned. Although she had recovered her cultivation and even progressed compared to the past, she was still a chaotic prime. A huge difference still existed between her and a Grand Prime. After a while of thought, Su Ran told Jian Chen, the Anatta Tower's value is immeasurable. Your merit from returning the Anatta Tower should be enough to exchange for some formations that can deal with Grand Primes. Although they might not be able to kill Grand Primes, as long as they keep the Grand Prime busy, I might be able to kill them. Of course, that's only if the Grand Prime isn't too powerful. I could only go to the first and second levels of the Legacy Hall within the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng. I only took a 9 Tribulations Incineration formation that can kill 7th Heavenly Layer Chaotic Primes and below, said Jian Chen. Su Ran's eyes lit up when she heard that. You actually exchanged a 9 Tribulations Incineration formation. If you have that formation, I am confident about heavily injuring a Grand Prime that's not too powerful. Su Ran explained when she saw Jian Chen's surprise, don't underestimate the 9 Tribulations Incineration formation. Indeed, the 9 Tribulations Incineration formation can only kill 7th Heavenly Layer Chaotic Primes, but it's no ordinary formation. It's a wondrous killing formation that specially targets the soul. Even some Grand Primes will be affected once they become trapped in it. Although the 9 Tribulations Incineration formation can't injure Grand Primes, as long as it affects them, I'll be able to harm them from outside. Only harm and not kill? Jian Chen asked. Jian Chen, don't underestimate any Grand Prime. With my current level of cultivation and the formation, injuring a Grand Prime is already extremely impressive. Killing one is basically impossible. Su Rang paused for a split second there before she added, of course, it's not impossible for you to kill a Grand Prime. How so? Jian Chen immediately asked. You can seek help from outsiders. Su Ran looked at Jian Chen deeply and said, there has always been a saying among the people. Anything can happen with money. This saying is also prevalent in the saints' world. As a result, as long as you're rich enough, you can ask an expert from the Myriad Bone Guild to take action. The Myriad Bone Guild? Jian Chen was confused. He had never heard of this organization before. The Myriad Bone Guild is the most powerful assassination organization in the saints' world. They have many assassins, ranging from the Origin Realm to Grand Prime. As long as you're willing to pay the price, you can even get their Grand Primes to kill people for you, said Su Ran. Jian Chen's eyes lit up and asked, what's the price to ask the experts of the Myriad Bone Guild to kill a Grand Prime for me? In terms of 5-colored divine crystals, a first heavenly layer Grand Prime costs 1,000,000 of them. The stronger they are, the more it'll cost. Jian Chen gasped. 1,000,000 5-colored divine crystals was an astronomical figure to him. After all, he had only managed to sell a low-quality god artifact on the spatial battleship from the Jade Fluid Plane for several thousand 5-colored divine crystals. Jian Chen could not even consider 1,000,000 of them. Even weaker Grand Primes would not be able to take out such a sum. Colored divine crystals were simply too precious. They were condensed from the presence of ways, so they possessed the power of ways. Usually, they only formed in outer space, making them a truly wondrous item created by the world. They were not like the regular divine crystals that could be harvested en masse through mines. Although there were many 5-colored divine crystals among the resources he had taken from the Heavenly Palace of Bisheng, it was nowhere near 1,000,000. Moreover, even if he did gather 1,000,000 5-colored divine crystals, he would only be able to kill a first heavenly layer Grand Prime. Although he had no idea how many heavenly layers the Elder of Mountains and Seas was at, he was certain that it was not just the first. However, we have the 9 Tribulations Incineration formation now, so there's no need for us to ask the Myriad Bone Guild to kill a Grand Prime. We only need to ask for a full-strength attack from an expert of the Myriad Bone Guild to injure the person you want to kill. I'll handle the rest. Jian Chen, how many 5-color divine crystals do you have on you? Su Ran asked. Around 100,000, said Jian Chen. He had exchanged this sum from the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Originally, he planned to save these up for his sister. 100,000? That's enough. Let's go. I'll take you to the Myriad Bone Guild. They happen to have a branch on the Prosper Plain. The branch was located in a bustling city within the central region of the Prosper Plain. When Jian Chen saw the Myriad Bone Guild, he found that it was like what its name suggested. It was a small building completely constructed from white bone. The building was only 3 stories tall, and it sat in an extremely remote alleyway that barely anyone would walk past. It added a sense of gloominess to the building of bones. Jian Chen followed Su Ran into the branch. The building was dark inside, and the powers for great formations operated there. Not only did it cut off all senses of the soul, but even vision would be greatly affected. At this moment, darkness descended. The entire building immediately lost all of its light and became pitch black. Jian Chen immediately felt like he had lost all his senses. He could not even see anything with his eyes. Jian Chen knew that this was caused by the powers of the formations here. Who do you want to kill? What is their cultivation? A child who only seemed to be 8 or 9 years old appeared before Jian Chen within the darkness. He shone with a mysterious light, preventing the darkness there from swallowing him. As a result, he stood out. Jian Chen's eyes narrowed as soon as he saw the child, as the child did not give off any energy at all. He just seemed like an ordinary kid. The child felt like a ball of mist, difficult for Jian Chen to see through and understand. We want the Myriad Bone Guild to send a first heavenly layer Grand Prime. We only need a single full-powered strike from them. Su Ran's voice rang out from the darkness, but Jian Chen was unable to sense her at all. The power of the formations within the Myriad Bone Guild obscured all his senses. All he could see was the child right now. A full-powered strike, which is a single attack. 80,000 5-color divine crystals, the child said emotionlessly. Afterwards, Jian Chen handed over 80,000 5-color divine crystals, and the child passed him a jade talisman. He said, when you need the Myriad Bone Guild to take action, just activate the jade glyph. Remember, there will only be an attack on the level of a first heavenly layer Grand Prime. When we activate the talisman, will your person arrive on time? Su Ran frowned. The process seemed slightly different than rumored. You do not need to worry about that, said the child coldly before vanishing. The darkness in the building vanished, and everything returned to normal. Jian Chen and Su Ran looked at each other before looking at the jade talisman and then the empty Myriad Bone Guild. They said nothing and just left. After the two of them departed, the child appeared silently. He stood in the Myriad Bone Guild as he looked at Jian Chen with a deep, piercing gaze. It was also at this moment that a gray-robed old man hurried down from upstairs. Several people followed behind him. These people were all the members who watched over and managed this branch. The old man took his people and arrived behind the child in a hurry. He bowed towards the child politely and asked fearfully, Sir, why have you come personally? Chapter 2433, The Protector Swords Appear. I've come to see Jian Chen. I want to check out just how different this person is, said the child without even looking back. He was extremely indifferent. Jian Chen? The old man behind the child was puzzled. The young man earlier was the person who stirred up the saint's world with the Anatta tower, Jian Chen. The child's gaze became extremely deep, and he continued, the heavenly palace of Bisheng actually learnt about the Anatta tower's appearance long ago. Logically speaking, they should have retrieved it as quickly as they could, but they turned a blind eye to its appearance, allowing the experts of the saint's world to fight over it. Originally, I was extremely puzzled by this. I wondered what the heavenly palace of Bisheng was planning. However, I finally understand it now. The heavenly palace of Bishing allowed Jian Chen to hold on to the Anatta tower because the Anatta Grand Exalt had allowed it. What? The Anatta Grand Exalt. The old man behind the child was immediately startled when he heard that. In disbelief, he asked, the Anatta Grand Exalt, didn't he die over 3 million years ago? I only learned about this recently from that Azure Pang. A ninth Majesty had appeared from the heavenly palace of Bishing. Since there's a ninth Majesty, it means that the Anatta Grand Exalt is still alive, as all people who take up the title of Majesty in the heavenly palace of Bishing are the Anatta Grand Exalt's disciples. Only the old man could hear the child's words. The people that stood behind the old man heard nothing at all. The old man took in a deep breath and slowly calmed himself down. He said, I understand. Jianshan probably has some sort of connection to the Anatta Grand Exalt, so our Myriad Bone Guild will do our best to be on good terms with him. On good terms, is it? The child crossed his arms and gradually smiled. However, the smile just seemed frightening. It was chilling. On the desolate plain, within the Tower of Radiance, all the mist that permeated the place had dispersed. As a result, the miniature world within the Tower of Radiance had become the safest place in the Radiant Saint Hall. In the Radiant Saint Hall, there were actually many Radiant God Kings who could break through to the level equivalent to late God King. However, due to the threat of the mysterious expert, they never dared to take that step. Now that the Tower of Radiance had become the greatest sanctuary of the Radiant Saint Hall, all of these Radiant God Kings broke through and formally condensed their late seven-colored soul core. As a result, many Radiant God Kings gathered within the Tower of Radiance. They were scattered everywhere, cultivating alone and comprehending the laws of the hallowed. They decided to remain here until they condensed a soul tree, which was equivalent to the primordial realm. Only then would they leave. Xian Ming had returned to the Radiant Saint Hall recently, so he was also in the Tower of Radiance. Due to Xian Ming's father being one of the 8 vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall, he was one of the people with the greatest status in the Tower of Radiance. There would always be some Radiant God Kings around him such that it seemed like people would gather towards him. I never actually thought that brother Jian Chen would actually be a part of the martial soul lineage. Xian Ming sighed emotionally. He had learnt many things about Jian Chen from the Radiant God Kings. Humph, Xian Ming, you were actually working with a member of the martial soul lineage. Do you know your crimes? This moment, the gateway to the miniature world suddenly opened. Gong Sunji walked out. There was a sliver of arrogance on his face. He stared at Xian Ming coldly as if he was judging a criminal. Over 30 Radiant God Kings followed behind Gong Sunji. They were all lords of main peaks in the Radiant Saint Hall. Some of them even wielded god artifacts. However, the Lord of the Myriad Flowers Peak, Donglin Qiushui, was not among them. Gong Sunji used his identity as the descendant of the Grand Exalt to take the miniature world for himself. As a result, it became his personal territory. Only the people who followed him could cultivate in the miniature world. Donglin Qiushui was unwilling to yield to Gong Sunji, so she left the miniature world and cultivated outside. Xian Ming obviously knew about Gong Sunji's new identity, but he did not fear Gong Sunji at all. His face immediately sank, and he said coldly, Gong Sunji, do you think you're the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall? Whether I'm guilty or not is not up to you to decide. Not only did Jian Chen steal the Grand Exalt's cultivation method from our Radiant Saint Hall, but he's also a part of the martial soul lineage. He's our mortal enemy, so all those people who have ties with Jian Chen should be executed. Bring me Xian Ming. Gong Sunji said coldly. The peak lords behind Gong Sunji all hesitated, but very soon, 8 of them made up their minds and charged towards Xian Ming at the same time. 3 of them even used god artifacts. Sure, Xian Ming's father was a vice leader, but Gong Sunji was the descendant of the Grand Exalt. Even the leader's treatment towards Gong Sunji had changed evidently, so they believed that Gong Sunji's current status was even greater than Xian Ming's father. Gong Sunji, stop. The expressions of the Radiant God Kings around Xian Ming all changed drastically. Xian Ming's face was sunken. Cold light flickered in his eyes. He was fearless. Laws of the hallowed condensed around him. He was clearly ready to fight. However, at this moment, the world within the Tower of Radiance suddenly began to shake violently. The earth tossed as the entire world trembled. It seemed like the end of the world. 9 sword-shaped mountains suddenly appeared high in the sky, standing there like swords. They shone with blinding light, making them seem like 9 suns from afar. This alarmed all the radiant god kings within the Tower of Radiance, and Xian Ming and Gong Sunji's argument ended just like that. Everyone raised their heads and stared at the 9 mountains in the sky. They had no idea what was happening. Look, it seems like there's a sword planted in each of the 9 mountains. There really is a sword. Their god artifact at the very least. What terrifying pressure. The 9 swords must be of great quality, the radiant god kings cried out in the Tower of Radiance as discussions sprang up everywhere. At this moment, a thunderous voice boomed out, echoing through every corner in the Tower of Radiance. Master had 9 retainers in the past. They were all extremely powerful and went to war with Master. They all committed services of great merit. After Master passed away, his 9 retainers did not choose to live on either. Instead, they used their innate secret techniques to condense their vital energies, using their bodies and powers to condense 9 swords, which were sealed here. They became the protector swords, which would be used by the next master of the Tower of Radiance to conquer the world. With the 9 swords, you will possess power equivalent to the 9 retainers. The voice came from the artifact spirit. The breathing of all the radiant god kings in the Tower of Radiance became ragged when they heard that. They looked at the 9 protector swords greedily as their blood surged. Gong Sunji's body trembled from excitement. The most powerful 9 retainers under the master of the Tower of Radiance. As long as someone wielded a protector sword, they would possess the power of a retainer. Just how tempting of a thing was that? Chapter 2434, The Authority to Distribute. Sir, Artifact Spirit has suddenly told us about these 9 swords. What is the meaning of this? Are you stupid? Can't you tell? Sir, Artifact Spirit clearly wants to find masters for these 9 swords. These 9 swords came from the 9 retainers under the master of the Tower of Radiance in the past. The swords contain the power of the 9 retainers. Doesn't that mean whoever wields them, even if they're only a radiant god king, will be able to reach the level of peak experts immediately and stand at the level of the leader, heavens? To go from a radiant god king to a peak expert. That is literally a chance to rise up. The radiant god kings were all in high spirits as they discussed the matter fervently. All of them were interested. Gong Sunji no longer paid any attention to Xian Ming. His face became bright red as his breathing became extremely ragged. He raised his head and bellowed out, Artifact Spirit, your master is my ancestor. I'm his only living descendant now, so I'm the only choice for inheriting the Tower of Radiance and becoming the Tower of Radiance's master. I want you to give all 9 swords to me. I must be the one who chooses who gets the swords. Gong Sunji's heart beat heavily. At that moment, he felt excitement at a level he had never experienced before. Once he obtained the authority to distribute the swords, the strongest protector sword would definitely go to him. Once I wield the greatest protector sword, the 8 other people will have to follow me, and they'll be under my command. How many people in the Saints' world would still dare to provoke me, Gong Sunji? And what will the leader become before me? As soon as he imagined such a glorious scene, Gong Sunji became extremely eager. As soon as Gong Sunji mentioned how he wanted to distribute the protector swords, the hearts of all the radiant god kings in the surroundings turned cold. As if they had been doused in cold water, the greed in many of them was put out. After all, Gong Sunji was the descendant of the master of the Tower of Radiance. In everyone's eyes, Gong Sunji definitely had the greatest authority in the Tower of Radiance. He was the person who had the greatest influence over the artifact spirit. If he ordered the artifact spirit as the descendant of the Grand Exalt, the artifact spirit might actually have to listen to him. After all, the miniature world that held the Grand Exalt's legacy was the best evidence of this. Donglin Qiushui's face darkened. She had refused to listen to Gong Sunji, so her relationship with him had already taken a bad turn. If Gong Sun-ji gained the authority to distribute the 9 swords, she definitely would not obtain one. Compared to Donglin Xiushui's dejection, the eyes of the radiant god kings who had decided to follow Gong Sun-ji all became ablaze. They all swore from behind Gong Sun-ji that he would be their leader in the future. Clearly, these people all believed that Gong Sun-ji would obtain the authority to distribute the 9 protector swords, which was why they wanted to be in Gong Sun-ji's good graces. They only hoped that Gong Sun-ji would bestow a protector sword on them so that they could become a peak expert in a split second. At the same time, 9 figures flew over from the entrance of the Tower of Radiance. Their presences were mighty, and they were wrapped up in the laws of the hallowed. They were extremely powerful. These 9 people were the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yuan, and the 8 vice leaders. Not only did the artifact spirit's voice boom through the Tower of Radiance, it also informed the people in charge of the Radiant Saint Hall about the 9 protector swords. I never thought there were such powerful swords hidden within the Tower of Radiance. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall stared deeply at the 9 mountains in the distance. There had never been any records regarding the existence of the 9 protector swords. These 9 protector swords really are very powerful. Just the presence they give off gives me chills. The 9 retainers were 6th heavenly layer grand primes at the very least in the past. Perhaps they were even more powerful, said a vice leader behind the leader sternly. His eyes also blazed with interest. The power of the 9 protector swords had greatly surpassed them. They had far surpassed the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall. Everyone has the opportunity to become a wielder of a protector sword. The protector swords exist for the master of the Tower of Radiance, so whoever inherits a protector sword must serve the master of the Tower of Radiance and fight for them. Now, immediately gather all hallowed saint masters, regardless of strength or talent. As long as they have comprehended the laws of the hallowed, bring them here. The artifact spirit's voice rang out through the entire world. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall frowned. He could not help but become interested as well when he heard that everyone had the opportunity to obtain a protector sword. However, what he refused to accept was that all the people who wielded a sword would have to serve the master of the Tower of Radiance. After all, he was a peak expert on par with Grand Primes. He had his pride. It would be difficult for him to serve someone after holding a position of dominance for so long. He would not object to this if the master of the Tower of Radiance was a supreme expert or a grand exalt. However, based on the current situation, Gong Sun-ji might end up as the next master of the Tower of Radiance. He, the mighty leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, supposed to listen to Gong Sun-ji's commands? Aside from Xian Zhan, who hesitated as well, the other 7 vice leaders were all eager. No, you're not allowed to do this. Artifact Spirit, you have to give me the authority to distribute the 9 protector swords. I order you as the descendant of your master. I must be the one who distributes the protector swords. Gong Sun-ji became flustered. What the 9 protector swords protected was the second master of the Tower of Radiance. Although he was the Grand Exalt's descendant, he still had not become the master of the Tower of Radiance, so he needed to have absolute control over the 9 protector swords one way or another. However, the artifact spirit completely ignored his cries. After all, the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance was the artifact spirit who had come up from the lower world with Jian Chen. All the protective formations of the Radiant Saint Hall had been activated outside the Tower of Radiance. The leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yuan, had passed on this information to all the elders as quickly as he could, ordering all the elders to gather the hallowed saint masters in the Radiant Saint Hall and send them to the Tower of Radiance. Yuan did not hide the news of the protector swords, so all the radiant god kings within the Tower of Radiance learned about it. There was the artifact spirit there as well, so even if he wanted to hide it, he could not. As a result, he directly announced the news of the protector swords in the Radiant Saint Hall. Although their appearance might threaten his grasp over the Radiant Saint Hall, the Radiant Saint Hall would also strengthen with their appearance, becoming the greatest organization on the desolate plain. He could only follow the flow with this. The Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Xian, sat on the top of his mountain. He gazed at the clouds in the distance blankly. He seemed lonely, sorrowful, and bleak. He was originally a member of the Han family. Although his status in the clan was nothing special, it was still his origins. However, since his newly accepted disciple, Chang Yang, was a member of the marshal's soul lineage, the patriarch of the Han family had cut him off without any mercy at all, reducing him to a loner. This was all because if the Han family wanted to retain their relationship with the Radiant Saint Hall, they could not afford to keep Han Xian. Chapter 2435, Endless Harassment. However, the matter did not end there. After he was exposed as Jian Chen, Han Xian was greatly affected as well. His status in the Radiant Saint Hall plummeted daily. Many of the Radiant God Kings he had been on good terms with avoided him. They stayed as far away from him as possible, like he was a god of the plague. Sometimes, Radiant God Kings that had disagreements with Han Xian in the past would even come to the Soaring Clouds Peak to provoke him. They would make scornful remarks, showing no respect to Han Xian at all. This was because in many people's eyes, Han Xian had already become a criminal of the Radiant Saint Hall. Accepting a member of the marshal's soul lineage was a crime punishable by death in the Radiant Saint Hall. Even though Han Xian had been completely clueless, he would not be able to avoid punishment. However, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall never got around to dealing with the matter, which was why Han Xian was still the lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak. However, everyone believed that Han Xian's day of judgment would be soon. At this moment, a powerful senses of the soul swept over and passed on the same message to all the Radiant God Kings in the region. Han Xian's eyes lit up slightly before becoming gloomy again very soon. He murmured, "Protector swords? What does that have to do with me?" Han Xian immediately lost interest. He knew it was impossible for him to gain the recognition of a protector sword. However, after hesitating slightly, he said, "Bai Yu, come immediately." Before long, the white-robed Bai Yu arrived at the top of the mountain with Radiant Saint force. She stood behind Han Xian and bowed. "Greetings to teacher." Bai Yu was just as pretty as before. Her white robes wrapped around her body, perfectly depicting her beautiful figure. Her long, black hair was blown around by the wind on the mountain peak, making her seem extremely elegant. The only problem was that her face seemed slightly worried, making her seem much more haggard than before. The Soaring Clouds Peak status in the Radiant Saint Hall had plummeted because of Jian Chen. Bai Yu was also affected, so it had not been easy for her either. Out of the 3 past disciples of the Soaring Clouds Peak, only she remained. "Bai Yu, I've just received a message from the elders that 9 protector swords have appeared in the Tower of Radiance. Those who obtain one will reach the level of peak experts. You can go try it," said Han Xian. "Sir, my talent is unimpressive. I probably have no right to obtain a protector sword," said Bai Yu calmly. She did not lighten up at all. "Bai Yu, don't underestimate yourself. There aren't a lot of people who become hallowed saint masters with just a 2-colored soul core." Bai Yu sighed gently when she heard that. She was gloomy. Only she understood that her talent was not impressive. She could only become a hallowed saint master so soon because of her second senior brother. She had comprehended the laws of the hallowed from her second senior brother and became a glorious hallowed saint master. However, ever since her second senior brother left, her progress had become insignificant compared to the past when she had her second senior brother's help. As a matter of fact, it could be described as no progress at all. "Go. You're the pride of my Soaring Clouds Peak. If you obtain a protector sword, our status will rise. We won't have to worry about being harassed by others anymore," Han Xian encouraged. "Yes, sir." Bai Yu could only agree reluctantly when she saw Han Xian's haggard face, even though she might disappoint him. She did not even consider the 9 swords because she knew it was impossible for her. The Donglin clan was one of the peak organizations on the desolate plain as well, but they were truly the weakest. This was because the ancestor of the Donglin clan, Donglin Su, was a Grand Prime who had only broken through recently. He was only a first heavenly layer Grand Prime right now. However, even with that being the case, the Donglin clan still held some power on the desolate plain. Currently, Donglin Yenshue sat within a pavilion in a garden inside the Donglin clan. A zither was placed on the stone table before her as she played it. Back then, when Jian Chen's identity had been exposed, the ancestor of the Donglin clan, Donglin Su, had fetched Donglin Yanxue from the Radiant Saint Hall. She had not returned to the Radiant Saint Hall since then. As there had never been a formal judgment, and the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall had never formally revoked her identity as chosen saint, she was still the chosen saint of the Radiant Saint Hall. At this moment, a middle-aged man walked over. He looked at Donglin Yanxue gently and said, "Yanxue, your master just sent a message to me. She said that there's a huge fortuitous encounter in the Radiant Saint Hall, and she wants you to come immediately." The middle-aged man was Donglin Yanshue's father, the current patriarch, Donglin Xiong. Donglin Yanxue stopped playing the zither. She seemed slightly doubtful and asked, "A fortuitous encounter? Father, tell me what it is exactly." "I don't know the exact details either, but your master, Mu Shui, would never harm you. It's best if you go. The clan stands behind you, so the Radiant Saint Hall won't do anything to you," said Donglin Xiong. With that, Donglin Yanxue stood up. She stowed the zither away and slowly made her way out of the pavilion. When she passed by Donglin Xiong, she paused slightly and asked after a slight hesitance, "Father, I acted alone and helped Jian Chen escape, offending the Radiant Saint Hall, so why hasn't the clan placed any blame on me at all?" Donglin Xiong chuckled and said, "Protecting you was the ancestor's intentions. The ancestor is not short-sighted like others. He could tell from long ago that Jian Chen was someone extraordinary. You can only befriend people like that, not offend. As a result, the ancestor did not blame you at all when you assisted Jian Chen's escape. Instead, he praised you. That is because you've shown kindness to Jian Chen. If Jian Chen matures in the future, he will definitely return the favor manyfold." Many Radiant Saint Masters had already gathered outside the Tower of Radiance now. These Radiant Saint Masters possessed various cultivation level, but without any exception, all of them had comprehended the laws of the Hallowed. At this moment, they all stared at the Tower of Radiance excitedly, studying it carefully. Isn't that Bai Yu of the Soaring Clouds Peak? You actually have the face to show yourself here?" A surprised and scornful voice suddenly rang out. A young man pointed at Bai Yu and sneered. Bai Yu stood in the crowd. She gritted her teeth silently as her eyes flowed with unyielding light. She had heard these remarks many times in the past years. She had cried. She had grieved. She had been in pain. She had been in despair. As a result, she had already adapted to it. "What? Bai Yu, do you think you can become the master of a protector sword? Do you think you have the ability? Bai Yu, you had ties with a member of the martial soul lineage. Do you think Sir Artifact Spirit will let you inherit a protector sword? Ha ha ha, Bai Yu, you actually have the courage to enter the Tower of Radiance. Jian Chen of the martial soul lineage stole the supreme legacy of our Radiant Saint Hall under Sir Artifact Spirit's watch, and you're related to Jian Chen. Do you think Sir Artifact Spirit will just kill you off out of anger once you enter the Tower of Radiance, Now that you mention it, that really does seem to make sense. Everyone, do you think Sir Artifact Spirit will kill Bai Yu as soon as she sets foot in the Tower of Radiance?" Many hallowed Saint Masters in the surroundings sneered. Bai Yu had already paled. She clenched her fists tightly and silently endured the scorn and sneers from around her. She said nothing. Chapter 2436, You're Bai Yu? At this moment, a group of elders approached the Tower of Radiance as well. Their arrival immediately made the surroundings fall quiet. Even the hallowed Saint Masters who scoffed at Bai Yu shut up. Bai Yu saw her former master, Mu Shui, with a single glance. In the past, when Bai Yu was just a nameless disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak, it was Mu Shui who came to the Soaring Clouds Peak to accept her as a disciple. Mu Shui had taken her into the Sacred Hall, which made Bai Yu's status rise up. She became an elder's disciple, a position that all people envied. However, it was also Mu Shui who expelled her, severing their ties as master and disciple. Bai Yu had basically fallen from heaven to hell in a single moment. As she looked at Mu Shui's familiar face, mixed feelings appeared in Bai Yu's eyes. After a moment of hesitation, she made her way through the crowd and arrived before Mu Shui. She bowed and said, "Master." Bai Yu's action caused all the elders to cast their gazes over, but all of their eyes were cold. Mu Shui's eyes were cold as well. She stared at Bai Yu emotionlessly and said, "Bai Yu, it's actually inappropriate for you to be here. And I stopped being your master many years ago. You should call me elder." Bai Yu's heart turned cold when she heard Mu Shui's icy words. Her eyes reddened and teared up. She could endure the sneers and scoffs from the hallowed Saint Masters around her, but she was unable to ignore the words of her former master. Mu Shui's coldness and emotionlessness stabbed at her heart like a needle. It caused piercing pain. "Look, Donglin Yanxue has actually come as well." "What? Donglin Yanxue? That traitor who helped the marshal's soul lineage? She actually has the face to return." At this moment, a soft discussion started. The crowd surged. The white-robed Donglin Yanxue, who possessed otherworldly beauty, slowly walked through the crowd. Wherever she passed by, the surrounding hallowed Saint Masters would step aside and automatically form a path. Donglin Yanxue could obviously hear the discussions in the surroundings, but she did not care at all. She seemed composed. In the end, she arrived before Mu Shui and bowed towards her. She said softly, "Master." "Yanxue, you've come." Mu Shui smiled faintly as she faced Donglin Yanxue. Donglin Yanxue had also helped Jian Chen in the past. As a matter of fact, her crimes were far more severe than Bai Yu's. However, Mu Shui treated Donglin Yanxue completely differently. "You have to do your best and try to obtain a protector sword this time. Once you gain the recognition of the protector sword, no one else will dare to speak badly about you in the Radiant Saint Hall in the future," Mu Shui said gently. Donglin Yanxue's eyes lit up, and she nodded gently. The protector swords. Bai Yu clenched her fists tightly to another side. Originally, she felt nothing towards the protector swords. However, she had already grown tired of the harassment and abuse from her seniors in the past few years. As soon as she heard about what the protector swords could do, she became interested as well. "Although it's almost impossible for me to obtain a protector sword with my talent, I must do my best," Bai Yu swore inside. Before long, the leader and 8 vice leaders emerged from the Tower of Radiance simultaneously. They worked together to unlock the Grand Exalt's formation around the Tower of Radiance before sending in all the hallowed Saint Masters. Opening the Grand Exalt's formation required 2 vice leaders at the very least, and they could not keep it open for too long. Since there were far too many hallowed Saint Masters this time, the Grand Exalt's formation needed to remain open for a long period of time, so they needed the leader and the 8 vice leaders to work together. All the hallowed Saint Masters gathered there charged into the Tower of Radiance as quickly as they could once the Grand Exalt's formation was opened. They constantly flickered, and the hallowed Saint Masters still outside rapidly decreased. Finally, all the hallowed Saint Masters had entered the Tower of Radiance after several hours. Even the elders did not remain. The crowded hall had now become empty. "Let's go in as well. Let's see just who will gain the recognition of the protector swords," said the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall before disappearing with the vice leaders. They also entered the Tower of Radiance. All the hallowed Saint Masters had already gathered together in the Tower of Radiance. There were several 100,000 of them. The Radiant Saint Hall possessed over 1,000,000 disciples, but not every single one of them had comprehended the laws of the hallowed. As a result, basically all the hallowed Saint Masters had gathered there now. After all, the protector swords represented a chance to rise up. Everyone was interested. There were definitely not a lot of outliers like Han Xian. All the hallowed Saint Masters sat on the ground as they looked curiously at the 9 mountains that hovered in the sky. Their eyes were filled with burning interest. Those who wield the 9 swords shall serve the Master of the Tower of Radiance, and they will only fight for the Master. The artifact spirit's voice echoed through the surroundings like booming thunder. The artifact spirit repeated the origins of the protector swords. After a stern warning, he said, "If there is anyone unwilling, you can leave now. Otherwise, Once you wield a protector's sword and refuse to abide by master's orders, you will die from the backlash of the protector's swords. Yu Qin, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, sighed gently when he heard that. With a single movement, he departed. Clearly, he did not plan on competing for the protector swords. Xian Zhan hesitated for a while as well before making up his mind and following Yu Qin out. He left this place. Burning interest filled the eyes of the 7 remaining vice leaders. Clearly, they wanted to take a protector sword for themselves. I wonder how the protector swords can be obtained? Donglin Yanxue stared at the swords that stood on the 9 mountains and wondered to herself. All the hallowed saint masters gathered here possessed varying strength. If they were supposed to contend using their strength alone, it would clearly be unfair. Who would be able to beat the 7 vice leaders? Artifact Spirit, do you hear me? Give the 9 protector swords to whoever I designate, Gong Sun Ji snarled seriously. His face was sunken as he was extremely agitated. He discovered that the artifact spirit did not seem to take him, the descendant of the Grand Exalt, seriously at all. The 9 protector swords meant the power of 9 peak experts. He hoped that the people who wielded the swords would be under his control. At this moment, the 9 mountains that hovered in the sky suddenly exploded with light. The light was almost tangible, enveloping all the hallowed saint masters seated below. Immediately, all the people shrouded by the white light lost their senses. All they could see was a white haze. They could not even expand the senses of their souls. Even the vice leaders were no exception. This was because none of them could resist the power of the 9 swords. Bai Yu sat within the white, hazy light. She felt unsettled and nervous. You're Bai Yu? At this moment, a warm voice rang out. A middle-aged man had appeared before her silently. The middle-aged man wore white robes, and he seemed benevolent. His body seemed to possess a wondrous power that could settle the agitation within people and calm them down unknowingly. Chapter 2437, The Masters of the Protector Swords. As she looked at the middle-aged man who appeared before her silently, Bai Yu felt like he had fused with the white light from the 9 mountains. As a result, he became the only thing that existed in this hazy white world. However, Bai Yu's heart shuddered in the next moment. Aside from the middle-aged man, there was nothing else around her. As such, she could guess the middle-aged man's identity. Her heart immediately tightened, and she became uneasy. Who are you? The middle-aged man smiled warmly, making him seem extremely friendly. Looking at your response, you must have guessed who I am already. I am the artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance. After receiving the confirmation, Bai Yu immediately paled. She subconsciously staggered backwards as her heart became chilling. The artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance was a godlike existence in Bai Yu's eyes. He was supreme. All the radiant god kings and elders had to lower themselves before him. They even had to refer to him politely as Sir or Senior. He was truly an indomitable existence. However, now that this supreme existence had come to meet her, Bai Yu immediately thought back to the words of the radiant god kings. Surely the artifact spirit had not come to kill her because of her relationship with her senior brother. After all, not only was her senior brother a member of the martial soul lineage, the mortal enemy of the Radiant Saint Hall, he had also entered the Tower of Radiance and taken away the most important thing here, the supreme legacy. Don't be nervous, I have no ill intentions, said the middle-aged man. He gently extended a finger, and 2 stone chairs and a stone table immediately rose up from the ground. He sat down on one of the stone chairs before pointing at the other stone chair and saying, "Let's sit and talk." If other hallowed saint masters saw how the artifact spirit had come to look for Bai Yu and even specially prepared a stone seat for her, their mouths would definitely hang agape. This was because this treatment was something that even the descendant of the Grand Exalt, Gong Sun Ji, did not receive. In reality, even the leader and vice leaders of the Radiant Saint Hall had never seen the artifact spirit's appearance. They had only heard his voice before. Bai Yu hesitated as she looked at the stone chairs before her. She was rather confused about what the artifact spirit was trying to do, but she still sat down fearfully in the end. Your second senior brother's true identity is a member of the martial soul lineage. He has tricked you for so long, so do you resent him? Asked the artifact spirit calmly. It was impossible to tell what he was feeling from his voice. After a moment of hesitation, Bai Yu made up her mind and worked up the courage to say, I don't resent him. No matter who my second senior brother is, he will always be my best second senior brother. The artifact spirit glanced at Bai Yu deeply. He did not say anything else and suddenly vanished. In the next moment, all the hallowed Saint Masters gathered within the Tower of Radiance felt the ground shake violently. A stifling power suddenly filled the surroundings. At the same time, they heard the crisp, clear thrum of a sword. All the hallowed Saint Masters gathered there could clearly see a streak of extremely bright white light fall from the ground. It vanished with a flash. A protector sword. It's a protector sword. Someone has gained the recognition of a protector sword. Who is it? Who is this person? The hearts of all the hallowed Saint Masters began to thump heavily. The protector swords represented an opportunity to rise up. Since someone had obtained a protector sword, it meant that they would rise and become a peak expert no matter what their cultivation was. They would turn into a supreme figure of the Radiant Saint Hall. In the distance, the leader, Yu Chen, and the vice leader, Xian Zhan, stood with their hands behind their backs. They stared at the region enveloped by white light. Someone has already obtained a protector sword, said the leader. His feelings were mixed. He had no idea whether he should feel joy or worry. No matter who it is, our Radiant Saint Hall's strength will be taken to a whole new level, Xian Zhan said indifferently. The region had been enveloped by the power of the protector swords. Coupled with the artifact spirit's interference, even they were unable to see what was happening inside the white light. They had no idea who obtained the protector sword. Bai Yu only saw a flash before her eyes, and a shining sword suddenly appeared before her. The sword was 4 feet long and 2 fingers wide. It had a simple design and bore the presence of time. The power within it was so strong that it was earth-shaking. At this moment, there was another flash. Before Bai Yu could even return to her senses, her finger was cut open by the sword, and it absorbed a droplet of her blood. Afterwards, to her surprise, a mysterious mental connection was constructed between her and the sword. The fourth protector's sword, Cliffgrinder's sword, Bai Yu murmured the name. She discovered that she could communicate with the sword before her at a basic level, so she immediately learned its name. Bai Yu's eyes immediately lit up. She was overexcited to the point where she struggled to believe that this was all real. The sword before her was actually a protector sword, and it was one that ranked 4th out of the 9 protector swords, Cliffgrinder's sword. From today onwards, you are the master of Cliffgrinder's sword. Cliffgrinder's sword was not forged from materials. Instead, it was what Cliffgrinder, the person who ranked 4th out of the 9 retainers, had transformed into. The sword is Cliffgrinder, and Cliffgrinder is the sword. However, Cliffgrinder has already turned into an artifact spirit now. You can communicate with the artifact spirit and unleash the power of Cliffgrinder's sword through him. At the same time, the voice of the Tower of Radiance's artifact spirit rang out in Bai Yu's head. Donglin Yanxue, you assisted Jian Chen of the martial soul lineage to escape. Have you regretted your actions? The artifact spirit appeared before Donglin Yanxue and questioned her. I don't regret it. If I could go into the past and face the same decision as before, I would still make the same choice, Donglin Yanxue said without any hesitation at all. Jian Chen's figure had already been engraved in her heart. The artifact spirit nodded before disappearing. In the next moment, a second thrum rang out. A protector's sword hovered before Donglin Yanxue with devastating power. This sword is Openfield's sword. It ranks 3rd among the 9 swords and was left behind by Openfield of the 9 retainers in the past. Before long, a 3rd protector's sword descended and hovered before Xian Ming. A protector sword. It's actually a protector sword. I never thought that I, Xian Ming, would be fortunate enough to obtain a protector sword. Ha 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 ha, the protector sword that ranks 8th, from today onwards, I'll be relying on you to obtain a stable footing in the saints' world. You will be the greatest treasure in my life." In a short moment, 3 protector swords had descended, which made the hallowed Saint Master who still had not obtained a protector sword uneasy and extremely nervous. "Artifact spirit, get out here." To one side, Gong Sun Ji barked aloud. Currently, his face was extremely vicious. 3 of the 9 protector swords had come down, and they all went to people not under his control. It made him furious. All the radiant god kings that followed him gathered by his side, but the 3 protector swords clearly did not come anywhere close to him. Chapter 2438. The strongest protector sword. Gong Sun Ji's snarls were clearly useless. The artifact spirit directly ignored him. This was because the current artifact spirit was no longer the same as before. As a result, Gong Sun Ji's identity as the Grand Exalt's descendant meant nothing. At this moment, a 4th streak of light shot down. Another protector sword pulled itself from a mountain and shot down with blinding light. The 4th protector sword was about to be distributed. However, the protector sword did not fall within the region of white light. Instead, it shot off towards the entrance as a streak of white light. In the distance, the eyes of both Yu Chen and Xian Zhan narrowed. They could clearly see a protector sword fall towards them. It moved extremely quickly. In an instant, the 4th protector sword crossed the huge distance and hovered before Xian Zhan. It flickered with light. Xian Zhan was puzzled as he stared at the simple protector sword that contained startling power. He was confused by its intentions. Even the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chen, was also stunned. This was because he and Xian Zhan had already backed out from the selection of the protector sword's wielder. However, this protector sword had come to them, which surprised them greatly. This protector sword was transformed from Mindwaker, who ranked 9th among the 9 protectors. Since Mindwaker's sword has chosen you, it means that fate brings you 2 together. You can become the wielder of Mindwaker's sword and fight for the master of the Tower of Radiance. The artifact spirit's voice rang out in Xian Zhan's head. Xian Zhan did not become excited at all as the protector sword hovered before him. Instead, he hesitated for a short while before asking, "Is the master of the Tower of Radiance Gong Sun Ji?" "He has no right to be my master," replied the artifact spirit. With that, Xian Zhan made up his mind. "All right. Since the next master of the Tower of Radiance isn't Gong Sun Ji, I will accept the 9th protector sword and become its wielder." The 9th protector sword flashed and cut open Xian Zhan's finger with speed so terrifying that even he could not react. It absorbed some blood. Yu Chen's eyes immediately flickered with light when he saw this from beside Xian Zhan. He stared straight at the protector sword as he seemed to be in thought. At the same time, the artifact spirit stood at the top of one of the mountains, and he quietly paid attention to the hallowed Saint Masters below. Bai Yu, Donglin Yanxue, Xian Zhan, and Xian Ming are all people who Master were once in touch with, so they've all obtained a protector sword. Only Han Xian is left. Han Xian was once Master's teacher. Before Master left, he specially ordered me to take good care of Han Xian. However, Han Xian hasn't entered the Tower of Radiance. Moreover, the lingering consciousness of the artifact spirit is always affecting me. He wants to assimilate with me and turn me into him. I don't know how much longer I can remain clear-headed, so I need to allocate all these protector swords to people that Master had ties with while I can, murmured the artifact spirit. After a moment of hesitation, he communicated with the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall secretly and made him gather all the hallowed Saint Masters who had not entered. Yu Chen did not hesitate. As soon as he received the artifact spirit's message, he left the Tower of Radiance. Before long, Yu Chen brought over 100 hallowed Saint Masters into the Tower of Radiance. All of these people knew that they were not fated to obtain a protector sword, so they felt nothing towards the swords. The Lord of the Soaring Clouds Peak, Han Xian, happened to be among them. Under Yu Chen's orders, all of these hallowed Saint Masters entered the region enveloped by light. Swish! However, as soon as they entered the area, there was the whistling of wind, and the 5th protector sword flew down from its mountain with a clear thrum, landing in Han Xian's hand. This is Deep Flow's sword, which ranks 5th out of the 9 protector swords. From now onwards, you are Deep Flow's sword's wielder. An obscure voice rang out in Han Xian's mind. Han Xian was completely stunned as he stared at the protector sword hovering before him. He sensed the obscure connection he had established with the sword. He felt like he was dreaming. A lot of information regarding Deep Flow's sword appeared in his mind. Out of the Master of the Tower of Radiance's 9 retainers, Deep Flow ranked 5th and was a 7th heavenly layer Grand Prime. Deep Flow had transformed into the sword. As its wielder, Han Xian had completely grasped all of Deep Flow's powers. As long as he had the sword, his battle prowess would be able to reach the peak even though he was only a Radiant God King. He could fight Grand Primes, and weaker Grand Primes would not be his opponent. The most powerful ancestor of the Han family was only a 9th heavenly layer chaotic prime right now, while the patriarch who had expelled him was only an infinite prime. However, the power he grasped now was no weaker than a Grand Prime's. This was all like a dream to Han Xian. It did not make sense. I am the descendant of the Grand Exalt. My ancestor was once your master. Artifact Spirit, I don't want the authority to distribute the protector swords. I only want the most powerful protector sword, Gong Sun Ji bellowed in the distance. As he watched the protector swords get allocated one by one, he began to worry about the fact that he still had not obtained one. He changed his request to obtaining the greatest protector sword. A protector sword was equivalent to rising up and becoming great. He did not care about whether he could become the future master of the Tower of Radiance anymore. He needed to obtain a protector sword. The artifact spirit glanced at Gong Sun Ji coldly from the top of the mountain and no longer paid attention to him. Gong Sun Ji held far too much resentment towards Jian Chen, so he would never let Gong Sun Ji inherit a protector sword. If it weren't for the influence of the lingering consciousness of the artifact spirit, you never would have been able to claim the miniature world for yourself, thought the artifact spirit. He was no longer the past artifact spirit, so he felt nothing towards the descendant of the previous master. The protector sword that ranks first is Godslayer's sword. The strongest out of the 9 retainers, Godslayer, transformed into it. Godslayer was an 8th heavenly layer Grand Prime when he was still alive, so the sword he transformed into is the strongest out of the protector swords as well. This sword should obviously go to Master's mother. The artifact spirit looked at the sword planted behind him. He had already decided who the sword should go to long ago. However, at this moment, the artifact spirit suddenly quivered. His body condensed from energy almost dispersed. 2 vastly different lights flickered in his eyes as if 2 independent consciousnesses and thoughts were engaged in an intense conflict. The artifact spirit of the Tower of Radiance's lingering consciousness had appeared once again, engaging in a battle with the artifact spirit of the Saint Artifact. It wanted to assimilate the artifact spirit of the Saint Artifact. Your age has already passed. You can't assimilate with me, bellowed the artifact spirit. His body would blur and consolidate. He was extremely unstable. However, in the end, all the original light in his eyes vanished. It was replaced by a foreign coldness. His eyes did not seem to possess any feelings at all. Godslayer's sword should go to Master's descendant, the artifact spirit said coldly before extending a finger towards the sword behind him gently. Immediately, Godslayer's sword directly rose up and fell into Gong Sun Ji's hand. Just like that, Gong Sun Ji obtained the most powerful protector sword, Godslayer's sword. Chapter 2439, An End to the Distribution, Godslayer's Sword. I've actually obtained the greatest protector sword, Godslayer's sword. Ha 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 ha, Gong Sun Ji could not help but laugh aloud as he held Godslayer's sword and sensed the information that poured out from it. It was also at this moment that the white light from the 9 mountains vanished. All the hallowed Saint Masters gathered there were exposed. The 9 mountains that hovered high in the sky vanished into space once again. They disappeared. What happened? Where did the 9 mountains go? The mountains have vanished. Has the distribution of the protector swords ended already? There are clearly 9 protector swords. Why has it ended after only 6 were allocated? Is there no one else among us who have been chosen? Immediately, noisy discussions sprang up in the surroundings. Many hallowed Saint Masters who had not been selected by a protector sword grumbled unhappily. They were gloomy and in low spirits. At this moment, 5 powerful balls of light shone. They were as blinding as suns. All the hallowed Saint Masters looked over, and what they saw immediately made them green with envy. 5 protector swords hovered there, above Donglin Yanxue, Bai Yu, Han Xian, Xian Ming, and Gong Sunji respectively. They were shrouded in a layer of clear light. It went without saying that the 5 of them were part of the people who had obtained protector swords. Isn't that Bai Yu of the Soaring Clouds Peak? Bai Yu has actually gained the recognition of a protector sword. Heavens, are my eyes deceiving me? Bai Yu only has a 2-colored soul core, yet she obtained a protector sword. This is unfair. Han Xian has actually gained the recognition of a protector sword as well. The last 2 people on the Soaring Clouds Peak have both obtained protector swords. That's unbelievable. The Soaring Clouds Peak has truly risen up. In the future, no one will dare to speak ill about the teacher and disciple of the Soaring Clouds Peak. Donglin Yanxue has obtained a protector sword as well. She helped Jian Chen of the martial soul lineage escape before. She's a criminal of our Radiant Saint Hall, so why did the protector sword choose her? A series of cries rang out in the surroundings. Many people struggled to accept the fact that Han Xian, Bai Yu, and Donglin Yanxue had obtained protector swords. In particular, the hallowed Saint Masters who had scoffed at Bai Yu or provoked her verbally all became ashen when they saw Bai Yu with her protector sword. Elder Mu Shui also stared right at Bai Yu. She faced emotional turmoil. Bai Yu was originally her disciple, but Mu Shui had viciously expelled her due to her ties with Jian Chen. However, she had never thought that Bai Yu would be lucky enough to obtain a protector sword. Looking at the simple sword above Bai Yu's head, Mu Shui suddenly felt bitter inside. At that moment, she suddenly thought about how honorable it would be if Bai Yu was still her disciple. Just how much would her status rise in the Radiant Saint Hall through Bai Yu? Sigh, Mu Shui exhaled gently. She knew that her relationship with Bai Yu was already past the point of no return. It was impossible for them to return to before. This was because Bai Yu had now become an important figure in the Radiant Saint Hall. Through the protector sword, her status and authority had surpassed the elders. Donglin Yanxue, you traitor. You actually have the face to show yourself here. Suddenly, a cry rang out. Gong Sunji discovered that Donglin Yanxue had actually gained the recognition of a protector sword as well, and his eyes immediately shone with cold killing intent. Gong Sunji utterly hated Donglin Yanxue. If it were not for her assisting Jian Chen's escape in the past, it would have been extremely likely for the Grand Exalt's cultivation method to end up in his hands. That was a Grand Exalt's cultivation method after all. How many people in the Saints' world were able to resist such a temptation? If he obtained the cultivation method, his future would be limitless. However, because of Donglin Yanxue, he lost his chance of obtaining the cultivation method, which made Gong Sunji's fury evident. Gong Sunji, you may be a radiant god king and have a greater cultivation than me, but we both wield protector swords, so our statuses are no longer different. You have no right to judge whether I'm a traitor or not, Donglin Yanxue replied coldly. Now that she wielded a protector sword, she was brimming with confidence. How dare you? Gong Sunji called out. Immediately, he ordered the hallowed Saint Masters around him to back off far away. After that, he swung his protector sword at Donglin Yanxue. However, as soon as he swung it halfway, the protector sword came to a halt. No matter how hard Gong Sunji tried, the protector sword would not fall. It was as if the protector sword was no longer under Gong Sunji's control. Gong Sunji, you were the last one to obtain a protector sword, so you probably haven't digested all the information from the protector sword yet. The past 9 retainers of the Master of the Tower of Radiance had once gone through thick and thin together. They are brothers bound by life and death, so it's impossible for any conflict to happen between them. Now that we wield the protector swords, we will encounter an intense resistance from the protector sword if we attack each other with them, Donglin Yanxue said coldly. Gong Sunji's face sank when he heard that. He had just finished digesting the information from the Protector Sword. Just like what Donglin Yanshua had said, the Protector Swords did not allow conflict between their wielders. At this moment, the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chen, appeared. He looked at the sky that had lost all traces of the mountains before looking at the wielders of the Protector Swords deeply. Looks like the allocation of the Protector Swords has come to an end. Everyone return. With that, the leader vanished. Father, I obtained a Protector Sword. Xian Ming showed off his Protector Sword to Xian Zhan excitedly from within the crowd. Xian Zhan, your son is impressive. He wields a Protector Sword. From today onwards, your son is a protector of our Radiant Saint Hall. The 7 other vice leaders gathered over as well. They all stared at the Protector Sword enviously. Good. 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 Xian Zhan smiled from ear to ear. He felt extremely proud inside as well. To another side, Donglin Xiushui arrived before Donglin Yanshue. She was in high spirits as well. Han Xian, on the other hand, held his Protector Sword and seemed to be in a daze. The surprise and joy were too great, so he still had not accepted this all as reality yet. The allocation of the Protector Swords had formally come to an end. 6 of the 9 Protector Swords had chosen masters, while the 3 others had vanished with the mountains. The artifact spirit did not utter a single word after that. Very soon, all the hallowed saint masters gathered there left. Only the portion who were equivalent to late god kings chose to stay behind. They planned on breaking through to the primordial realm and condensing a soul tree before leaving. Gong Sunji did not choose to remain within the Tower of Radiance. He had obtained the greatest Protector Sword, Godslayer's Sword, so his confidence had swelled. He no longer feared the mysterious expert who specifically targeted late Radiant God Kings. Right when Xian Zhan, Xian Ming, Bai Yu, Donglin Yanshue, Han Xian, and Gong Sunji left the Tower of Radiance with the Protector Swords, the celestial sword saint who sat in the Sword God Mountain slowly opened his eyes. He glanced in the direction of the Radiant Saint Hall indifferently and murmured, "Spirit swords transformed from the members of the ancient sword race. I never thought that the Tower of Radiance of the Radiant Saint Hall would possess traces of the ancient sword race. They've already become extinct." At the same time, a beggar-like, unkempt-only man laid back in a cane chair leisurely as he watched over the interplanar teleportation formation in the imperial capital of the Violet Wind Empire. At this moment, his body stiffened slightly, and he suddenly sat up. A light flickered through his eyes, and he stared straight at the central region of the desolate plain, towards the Radiant Saint Hall. What powerful energy! Why would 6 presences so powerful suddenly appear in the Radiant Saint Hall? Moreover, each presence is at the 7th heavenly layer of Grand Prime at the very least. The greatest expert of the desolate plain, the Celestial Sword Saint, is only a 6th heavenly layer Grand Prime. What happened in the Radiant Saint Hall? Chapter 2440. Returning to the star Brilliance plane, the unkempt old man had already vanished as he murmured those words. No one discovered his departure. Even the soldiers who guarded the nearby teleportation formation sensed nothing. When the unkempt old man appeared once again, he had crossed an extremely great distance, directly arriving in the central region of the southern region. He stood outside the protective formation of the Radiant Saint Hall. All the protective formations of the Radiant Saint Hall had already been activated, unleashed to their full power. From afar, the entire Radiant Saint Hall was enveloped by a huge energy dome. The unkempt old man did not give off any presence at all. He hovered outside the protective formations like a ghost, and with a slight movement, he simply drifted towards the protective formations. The protective formations of the Radiant Saint Hall seemed completely irrelevant before the old man. They were completely useless. In the end, the unkempt old man passed through the protective formations with ease and entered the Radiant Saint Hall. From the beginning to the end, no one discovered any abnormalities, nor did anyone discover the unkempt old man's existence. Even the leader of the Radiant Saint Hall, Yu Chen, failed to discover this uninvited guest in their Radiant Saint Hall. The old man did not venture any further in. After entering the Radiant Saint Hall, he hovered beside the protective formations as he stared straight ahead at the sacred hall and the clouds. His gaze seemed to pierce through space and the obstructions of the sacred hall, allowing him to see what was going on inside clearly. It's actually caused by 6 swords. These 6 swords aren't forged from any physical materials. It seems like they were transformed from powerful beings. A light of wonder appeared in the unkempt old man's eyes. After a moment of thought, an extremely obscure senses of the soul pulsed out, enveloping the entire sacred hall. Very soon, he gathered a lot of information. 9 protector swords. I never thought the Radiant Saint Hall would actually hide something like that. With the protector swords, will there be anyone who can stand up to the Radiant Saint Hall? Probably even the celestial sword saint who obtained the 3 lives sword god's legacy will be powerless against them. I just wonder if the Radiant Saint Hall will expand outwards with wild ambition. If that happens, blood will probably flow on the desolate plain. The unkempt old man stared in the direction of the sacred hall deeply. Afterwards, he disappeared into the protective formation again and left silently, just like when he arrived. Before long, all the protective formations of the Radiant Saint Hall were shut down, removing all defenses around the entire Radiant Saint Hall. At the same time, Xian Zhan, Xian Ming, Bai Yu, Donglin Yanxue, Han Xian, and Gong Sun Ji stood in the sacred hall, holding up their protector swords at the same time. Immediately, the power from the protector swords erupted like a flood, alarming all the peak experts on the desolate plain. The Radiant Saint Hall did not choose to hide the existence of the protector swords. Instead, they announced them to the public like this. Immediately, all the peak experts on the desolate plain roused. They all left where they cultivated and hurried to the Radiant Saint Hall in shock and unease. At the same time, Jian Chen and Su Ran left the Prosper Plain through a teleportation formation. Soon after their departure, a huge tower suddenly appeared where the heavenly palace of Bisheng stood within the central region of the desolate plain. With a heavy thud, it struck the empty ground before the heavenly palace of Bisheng heavily. The tower was extremely large, standing several 100,000 meters tall. In the distance, it seemed like the backbone of heaven. It was shocking. Moreover, its weight was astonishing. When it struck the ground, the entire Prosper Plain shook a few times. The tower had basically shaken up an entire plain by merely landing on the ground. This tower happened to be the Anatta Tower that Jian Chen had returned recently. However, the Anatta Tower had become countless times larger than when Jian Chen possessed it. It was also at this moment that the heavenly palace of Bisheng suddenly shone brightly. A blinding, golden light radiated from the heavenly palace of Bisheng, enveloping the Anatta Tower. The golden light seemed to possess a merciless power. Under it, all the sword slashes on the Anatta Tower rapidly weakened. The golden light clearly wore down the power of the sword slashes. At the same time, the power hidden in the very depths of the Anatta Tower seemed to awaken from the golden light. It began to cooperate with the golden light, wearing away the power of the sword slashes from inside and outside. The sword slashes had been left behind by the Nirvanic Immortal Exalt in the past, forming a powerful seal. It kept the Anatta Tower sealed up for over 3 million years. It was also because of the seals that not only was the Anatta Tower unable to repair itself, but it was not even able to unleash its full power. The sword slashes were intelligent. Sensing a threat, all the sword slashes shone brightly as a terrifying sword chi erupted in resistance. Supreme sword intent enveloped the entire Prosper Plain. There were many figures beyond the land of the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Peak experts hovered there silently as they stared at the colossal Anatta Tower. It's the Anatta Tower. The Anatta Tower has been returned. What terrifying sword chi. The Nirvanic Immortal Exalt sure is the greatest expert of the immortals world. The sword chi he left on the Anatta Tower is still so powerful after so many years. The artifact spirit of the heavenly palace of Bisheng is currently using the power of the divine hall to refine the sword chi. The heavenly palace of Bisheng really is a peak god artifact. Just the power from the divine hall itself is terrifying. Before long, the news that the Anatta Tower had been returned to the heavenly palace of Bisheng spread across the entire saints' world like wildfire. Many peak experts who were looking for the Anatta tower sighed gloomily when they learned this information. They were filled with pity and regret, and they all gave up on the hunt for Jian Chen. They searched for Jian Chen mainly for the Anatta tower. They wanted to return it to the heavenly palace of Bisheng in exchange for great merit, which would allow them to rely on the heavenly palace of Bisheng. Now that the Anatta tower had already been returned, it was pointless for them to continue their search for Jian Chen. In another place, Jian Chen and Su Ran constantly passed through teleportation formations. They crossed quite a large region in the Saints' world and returned to the Star Brilliance plane. Is the Grand Prime you want to kill a part of the Star Brilliance plane? Su Ran frowned slightly as she stood on the Star Brilliance plane. The Star Brilliance plane was the 9 brilliant Star Lords' territory, and she felt some fear towards a peak expert like that. I still don't know who the Grand Prime who killed Kaya is, but there is someone who does. Let's go to the 5-point sect, said Jian Chen before stepping into the nearby regional teleportation formation to enter the 5-point sect's territory. Chapter 2441. Already dead. The 5-point sect was a rather renowned peak organization on the Star Brilliance plane. When Jian Chen and Su Ran arrived in the 5-point sect's territory, they learnt the sect's location after some slight investigation. With that, they headed there directly. Before long, Jian Chen and Su Ran arrived at the entrance of the 5-point sect. The 5-point sect was established in a mountain range with extremely abundant origin energy. It shrouded the entire place as a dense, white mist. The white mist was not actually mist but dense origin energy instead. The 5-point sect would hold an acceptance ceremony once every 100 years. Many cultivators on the Star Brilliance plane would surge over when that happened, wanting to join the 5-point sect. It was glorious for them to become a part of the 5-point sect. It just happened to be the day of the acceptance ceremony, so the entrance of the 5-point sect was already packed. Various carriages and birds hurried over with young people of extraordinary origins riding them. All of them were gathering there. Many of the cultivators who came possessed modest backgrounds. When they saw the shining carriages and powerful birds, they all showed fear and backed up far away. At this moment, 3 streaks of light appeared on the horizon. It was 3 birds covered in golden feathers. They were quite powerful, all early god kings. A young man stood on the back of one of the birds. He had a striking face and bore undisguised arrogance. As soon as the cultivators saw the 3 beasts, they all avoided them. These people definitely came from a clan with primordial realm experts if they could have early god king mounts. Move! At this moment, someone on the 3rd bird called out. The other 2 birds flapped their wings and descended within the crowd with powerful gusts of wind, creating a mess. That was not it. Perhaps intentionally or purely accidentally, the wings of the 2 birds immediately swept towards the cultivators near them. Weaker people vomited blood and became heavily injured. After all, the 2 birds were early god kings. Even though there was no killing intent, the simple action could cause a lot of harm to weaker cultivators. However, none of the cultivators gathered before the 5-point sect dared to say anything about the ruthless actions of the 2 birds. The 5-point sect did not stop this either. Clearly, they did not care. Piss off. At this moment, a cold call rang out. The 3rd bird began to descend as it fluttered its wings. Where it descended just happened to be the boulder where Jian Chen and Su Ran stood. Jian Chen and Su Ran stood right where they were. They showed no intention of moving. The young man on the bird was angered by this. He communicated with his golden bird, and a sliver of coldness immediately appeared in its eyes. It immediately swept its sharp talons towards Jian Chen and Su Ran. Jian Chen frowned. Kaya's death had already filled him with killing intent, so he was like an unstable volcano right now. He would erupt violently from the slightest stimulation. His eyes turned cold, and he swung his arm gently. The surroundings exploded with light, becoming filled with sword intent. A resplendent strand of sword chi shot towards the golden bird. As a streak of light, the sword chi was as fast as lightning. With just a flash, the early God King bird had been sliced into two. Blood rained down. The young man on the bird directly fell from the sky. He was covered in blood and in horrible shape. Why, he stood on the ground and pointed at Jianchen, both surprised and angered. Originally, he wanted to curse and swear, but when he saw how composed Jianchen was, he did not dare to say anything anymore. Primordial Realm. He's actually at the Primordial Realm. A series of serious cries rang out from the nearby carriages. The God Kings in there all realized Jianchen's strength and were shocked. As soon as that was mentioned, all the cultivators gathered there were astounded. They all looked at Jianchen. People at the Primordial Realm were impressive figures in the Saints' world. In any peak organization, existences like that would enjoy a certain level of status. It would be very difficult to come across them usually. At this moment, a ruddy old man flew out from the entrance of the 5-Point Sect. He was a peak God King and the person responsible for accepting disciples. He directly arrived before Jianchen and asked for the reason why he came with great politeness. "I want to see the Point Cloud Venerable," Jianchen directly replied. The old man was immediately stunned. He looked at Jianchen blankly as he began to doubt what he just heard. The Point Cloud Venerable was the ancestor of the 5-Point Sect, a renowned peak expert of the star Brilliance plane. It was impossible to meet him so easily. Even some Primordial Realm experts would struggle to see the Point Cloud Venerable unless they had reached his level of cultivation. That might be a little. The old man was troubled. Sigh. "I guessed you would come." At this moment, an obscure voice rang out in the surroundings, making it impossible to find its origins. Ancestor, the peak God King of the 5-Point Sect immediately became stunned when he heard the voice. "Come in." The Point Cloud Venerable's voice rang out again. With that, the space before Jianchen twisted before forming a space gate in the end. The space in the Saints' world was extremely tough, and the laws were extremely powerful. Creating a space gate under these circumstances could only be achieved by peak experts who had comprehended the laws to an extremely profound level. Looking at the space gate, Jianchen stepped in without any hesitation at all. Su Ran followed behind him. In the blink of an eye, he and Su Ran vanished from the entrance of the 5-Point Sect, leaving behind a large group of stunned cultivators. Jianchen and Su Ran hovered in the air in the forbidden grounds of the 5-Point Sect. The white-robed, transcendent Point Cloud Venerable stood with his hands behind his back as he looked at Jianchen with mixed feelings. "Greetings to Senior." Jianchen bowed to respect seniority, but his face was a completely different story. He did not show any particular politeness or rudeness. "Jianchen, tell me why you've come," said the Point Cloud Venerable. His gaze was fixed on Jianchen the entire time. He completely ignored Su Ran who stood beside him. He did not even glance at her. It was as if Su Ran's cultivation as a chaotic prime was nothing in the Point Cloud Venerable's eyes. "I want to know that person's identity," said Jianchen. "The person who chased you calls himself the Elder of Mountains and Seas. He reached the 3rd heavenly layer of Grand Prime recently, making him one of the weakest among the 3rd heavenly layer." The Point Cloud Venerable looked at Jianchen deeply and continued, "If you want to seek revenge on the Elder of Mountains and Seas, save your efforts, as he's already dead." "What? He's already dead?" Jianchen was stunned. Disbelief filled his face. The Point Cloud Venerable nodded with absolute certainty. "That's right, he's indeed dead. Even I don't know who killed him." Chapter 2442, Scheming against Anatta. Jianchen fell silent when he heard that. He had paid a lot of 5-color divine crystals for a single attack from an expert of the Myriad Bone Guild, and it was just to kill the Elder of Mountains and Seas and avenge Kaya. In the end, when he returned to the star Brilliance plane to search for news about the Elder of Mountains and Seas, he learnt that his enemy was already dead. He was caught by surprise and was left feeling empty inside. He was not able to avenge Kaya, so Kaya's revenge was not complete. As a result, he felt extremely reluctant to drop the matter here. Then which organization does the Elder of Mountains and Seas belong to? Jian continued to ask a while later. The Point Cloud Venerable could obviously sense that the Elder of Mountains and Sea's death did not reduce Jian killing intent. As a result, he secretly sighed inside. If the Elder of Mountains and Sea's death had not alarmed the Supreme Blood Tier Grand Exalt, he would have never treated Jian so cautiously. What happened on the Star Brilliance plane last time allowed the Point Cloud Venerable to deeply understand that Jian was nowhere near as simple as he seemed. The Elder of Mountains and Seas is the founding ancestor of the Gloomwater sect on the Aqua Plane, said the Point Cloud Venerable. The Gloomwater sect of the Aqua Plane, Jian growled as he memorized the name. Afterwards, he asked, when Senior destroyed the Elder of Mountains and Seas' heaven-obscuring barrier of flowing water, you said that you would sever the ties of karma between you and me, but we don't know each other at all. May I ask where this so-called karma came from? Was it because the teleportation formation of the 5-point sect was suddenly shut down? The Point Cloud Venerable only nodded. Jian stared at the Point Cloud Venerable for a while. He remained calm the entire time, showing no particular emotion. Afterwards, he clasped his fist towards the Point Cloud Venerable and said, "Thank you for the information on the Elder of Mountains and Seas. I bid you farewell." Jian turned around to leave. The Point Cloud Venerable had suddenly passed the orders to shut down all the teleportation formations connected to other planes, causing Kaya to die on the Star Brilliance plane. This tie of karma would not be severed so easily. However, he also understood that the Point Cloud Venerable was far more powerful than the Elder of Mountains and Seas. He also grasped the laws of time and the laws of space, so the methods he had prepared for the Elder of Mountains and Seas might be ineffective against the Point Cloud Venerable. He could do nothing to him right now, so he could only be patient. The Point Cloud Venerable stood with his arms behind his back. He looked at Jian's back as if he could tell what Jian's thoughts were. He sighed powerlessly inside and said, "Jian, if you want to destroy the Gloomwater sect, it'll be difficult with just the two of you. That's because the protective formation of the Gloomwater sect was cast down by the Elder of Mountains and Seas through a great price and many resources. It's so powerful that it can block attacks from third heavenly layer Grand Primes. If you want to get through the formation, you need a fourth heavenly layer Grand Prime at the very least. If you insist on destroying the Gloomwater sect, I can help the two of you get through the formation. Moreover, there's a hell spring that produces hell water in the Gloomwater sect. Only a single droplet of hell water forms every million years. It has wondrous effects on even grand exalts, so it's extremely precious. Its value is immeasurable. I believe the Gloomwater sect has at least 10 droplets of hell water right now. As such, if you destroy the Gloomwater sect, there will definitely be many experts who will interfere with this and fight over the hell spring and hell water on the Aqua Plane. Moreover, the organizations on good terms with the Gloomwater sect may come to reinforce them during crucial times. I can step forward and talk for you so that all the experts on the Aqua Plane won't interfere with your grievances with the Gloomwater sect, the Point Cloud Venerable guaranteed. He was extremely confident, as if none of the experts on the Aqua Plane would dare to act up as soon as he stepped forward. The Point Cloud Venerable did indeed possess such strength and prestige because the overall strength of the Aqua Plane was nowhere close to the Star Brilliance plane. The Point Cloud Venerable was a renowned, peak expert on the Star Brilliance plane, and his existence alone allowed the 5-point sect to stand as the 9th most powerful organization on the Star Brilliance plane. In order to resolve his ties with Jian, the Point Cloud Venerable was going to great lengths. Jian paused when he heard that, but he did not express what he thought. He left with Su Ran. After leaving the 5-point sect, they moved through the bustling streets. Jian continued to ponder about why the Elder of Mountains and Seas had died. The Elder of Mountains and Seas was a third heavenly layer Grand Exalt after all. How could such a powerful person die so easily? Jian found it rather difficult to believe this. This was because all Grand Primes were very difficult to kill. Even against powerful opponents that they could not defeat, they could still flee through various secret techniques. As long as the difference in strength was not tremendous, it was basically impossible to stop them. Despite that being the case, the Elder of Mountains and Seas was not even able to flee as a third heavenly layer Grand Prime, so just how powerful was the mysterious expert who killed him? After pondering some more, he discovered that among all the experts he knew, probably only the Celestial Sword Saint and Mo Tianyun possessed such ability. Moreover, when he met the Point Cloud Venerable this time, Jian Shen discovered that he behaved rather abnormally as well. He did not act like a peak expert talking to a weaker cultivator at all. The Point Cloud Venerable tried to do everything he could to sever his tie with Jian Shen, which allowed Jian Shen to understand that he probably knew something, but he did not want to tell him. The light in Su Ran's eyes constantly flickered with uncertainty as well. She heard the complete conversation between the Point Cloud Venerable and Jian Shen. The mysterious death of the Elder of Mountains and Seas, as well as the Point Cloud Venerable's attitude towards Jian Shen, made her wonder. Very soon, Jian Shen and Su Ran departed from the Star Brilliance plane. They arrived on the Aqua plane through a teleportation formation. However, both Jian Shen and Su Ran failed to notice that a middle-aged man sitting on the highest mountain in the central region of the Star Brilliance plane was constantly paying attention to all of their actions until they left the plane. He was the supreme figure of the Star Brilliance plane, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. It looks like Jian Shen plans on destroying the Gloomwater sect on the Aqua plane, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord murmured to himself. The light in his eyes flickered. Then he stood up and left the Star Brilliance plane. The 9 Brilliant Star Lords stood politely in a blood-red divine hall on the Devour plane that the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt watched over. A figure shrouded by a bloody mist stood before him. The figure was the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt, a sovereign of the Saints' world. Are you saying that we should let Jian Shen die accidentally on the Aqua plane and sever Anatta's possibility of comprehending the way of heartlessness through Jian Shen? Said the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt coldly. Yes, Master. The Anatta Grand Exalt was already very powerful. If she continues to comprehend the ways, the Anatta Grand Exalt will only become more and more powerful. She might even surpass the warring gods in the end. By then, probably the entire Saints' world will be under the Anatta Grand Exalt's control. I believe that if it's possible, we should stop the Anatta Grand Exalt, said the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. Chapter 2443, Scarlet Water City. The matter is not as simple as you imagine it to be. If you want to stop Anatta, you'll have to stand against Anatta. And since Jian Shen is Anatta's fruit of ways, Anatta will secretly pay attention to all of his actions at all times. You need to get through Anatta first if you want Jian Shen dead, said the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt. He was rather fearful of the Anatta Grand Prime. However, if Jian Shen does die from an accident, it will indeed affect Anatta severely. After all, Grand Exalts have become the heavenly ways. The heavenly ways are uncompassionate, so Anatta has thrown herself into the snares of love to comprehend the way of love. She has already defied the laws that the heavenly ways operate on. As a result, she needs to kill Jian Shen to comprehend the way of heartlessness and free herself from the snares of love if she wants to recover her true self. If she loses Jian Shen, her way out of the snares of love, she won't be able to recover. She will become lost, and major problems will happen sooner or later. Master, so should we find a chance, the 9 Brilliant Star Lord said carefully. Before he could finish his words, the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt raised his hand and stopped the 9 Brilliant Star Lord. He said, do not act recklessly. Anatta is paying attention to all of Jian Shen's movements. Although she still hasn't fully recovered, her will can still descend anywhere in the Saints' world. No one can kill Jian Shen if she wants him alive. However, the ancient chaos chi of the chaotic space is about to erupt. At that time, all the Grand Exalts of the Saints' world, Immortals' world, and Demons' world will go to chaotic space. Naturally, Anatta won't be an exception. If she goes to chaotic space, she won't be able to sense anything that happens in the Saints' world. That might be an opportunity, Master. Doesn't that mean we can? The eyes of the 9 Brilliant Star Lord lit up. Whoever kills Jian Shen will become Anatta's mortal enemy. If Jian Shen really does die somehow, his death cannot have anything to do with you, said the Blood-Tier Grand Exalt sternly. I understand. Jian Shen and Su Ran walked out from a regional teleportation formation of a bustling city in the central region of the Aqua Plain. They had already entered the Gloomwater sect's territory. The city they were in right now belonged to the Gloomwater sect. The Gloomwater sect had the Elder of Mountains and Seas as their only Grand Prime, but now that he's dead, the Gloomwater sect will definitely have weakened drastically. The only issue is the chaotic primes in the Gloomwater sect, Su Ran said to Jian Shen secretly, analyzing the Gloomwater sect's current strength and discussing the matter of destroying them. The Gloomwater sect has a total of 5 Great Elders. All 5 Great Elders are chaotic primes. 1 is an early chaotic prime, 2 are mid-chaotic primes, and 2 are late chaotic primes. Dealing with the 3 early and mid-chaotic primes isn't an issue. The real problem lies with the 2 late chaotic primes. I've already investigated their strengths. They're at the 8th and 9th heavenly layer respectively. Su Ran became rather stern. My cultivation is currently at the 5th heavenly layer. If I use the various ancient abilities and secret techniques I possess, I can defeat 6th heavenly layer chaotic primes, but they need to be regular 6th heavenly layer chaotic primes. If their talent is outstanding, or they've comprehended powerful laws and possess extraordinary battle prowess, I'll only be able to match them as equals. The 7th heavenly layer is late chaotic prime. Even if I only encounter regular 7th heavenly layer chaotic primes with my current level of cultivation, I'll only be able to protect myself. The 8th heavenly layer is far more than what I can handle. Then what if you include the 9 tribulation incineration formation? Jian Shen remained calm. He did not feel any pressure from the strength of the Gloomwater sect at all. This time, he was prepared. He had come to kill the Elder of Mountains and Seas. Since he dared to target even a 3rd heavenly layer Grand Prime, a few chaotic primes would not be an issue. You don't understand the 9 tribulations incineration formation completely. It's a wondrous formation that especially attacks the soul. You'll be able to unleash its power to its greatest capacity if you use it on a single person. In such a scenario, even Grand Primes will be affected. However, if you use it against many people, its power will plummet. After all, wondrous formations that target the soul aren't like regular formations. Su Ran looked at Jian Shen and said, moreover, you only have a single 9 tribulations incineration formation, while there are 5 chaotic primes in the Gloomwater sect. You won't necessarily be able to envelope all the chaotic primes in a single formation, so just in case, we might have to use the attack from the Myriad Bone Guild. Senior, it must be the first time you've come to Scarlet Water City. Please buy a map. It details every location in Scarlet Water City. At this moment, a teenaged girl grabbed Jian Shen and stared at him slightly fearfully with her bright eyes. She tried to sell a map of Scarlet Water City to him. Jian Shen studied the young lady. He discovered that the young woman was pretty. Although she did not possess signs of alluring beauty, she did possess a pure presence. After all, her strength was pitiful. She was only a heaven saint master, and her clothes were tattered. She seemed like a young beggar. Jian Shen could tell with a single glance that the young lady's age was the same as her appearance. She was only a teenager, not an old monster who had cultivated for countless years. Just how much courage did she, who had pitiful strength, need to have to sell maps in the Scarlet Water City where many godhood cultivators dwelled? The slightest carelessness would be enough to claim her life. Jian Shen could not help but look at the young lady deeply. His soft side seemed to be touched when he saw the young lady's fearful, nervous, and eager gaze. He said, "All right, I'll buy a copy. How many divine crystals is it?" The young lady's eyes immediately lit up when she heard that. She was overjoyed as she said in a hurry, it's not much at all. Senior, a copy of the map is only 10 low-grade divine crystals. With that, the young lady began to look at Jian Shen nervously as if she was worried that he would change his mind. Jian Shen took out 10 low-grade divine crystals and bought a copy of a map from the young lady. However, he secretly stowed 1,000 high-grade divine crystals into the young lady's low-level space ring. The young lady was just too weak. He did not dare to give her supreme-grade divine crystals, as he was afraid that it would cause her trouble. High-grade divine crystals would be safer. Jian Shen did not talk much with the young lady afterwards. He left with Su Ran. Who knows how many insignificant people there are in the saints' world? How you suddenly show benevolence might be your downfall one day in the future, Su Ran said. She had silently paid attention to all of it. Jian Shen said nothing. He slowly unfurled the map he purchased from the young lady. The map was crudely made. It was not professional and could not be compared to the maps purchasable from the stores. Even the streets drawn on the map were twisted. It was not accurate at all. Jian Shen sighed inside when he looked at the map. He could tell with a single glance that the young lady had probably drawn the map herself. Let go of me, let go of me. I beg you, let me go. Don't take me away. At this moment, a familiar cry rang out. A few cultivators in the same uniform walked over from one side. One of them forcefully picked up the lady who had just sold Jian Shen a map. The cultivators were all deities, so the young lady who was only a heaven saint master was unable to resist at all. Chapter 2444, Destroying the City Lord's Estate. 1. Obviously, the many cultivators on the streets saw this. All of them looked at the young lady with sympathy and pity as she was taken away, but none of them dared to stand up and stop the group. It was as if the deities who took away the young lady struck great fear in the hearts of many of the gods and overgods present. They were afraid of provoking them. Jian Shen's eyes turned cold at the sight of this. With a flash, he arrived before the people and asked emotionlessly, "May I ask what crimes this sister has committed and why you want to take her away?" The deities were all stunned when they saw Jian Shen block their way. However, they sneered soon afterwards. One of them scoffed, "Kid, do you know who we are? It's best if you mind your own business, or you won't be walking out of Scarlet Water City alive." "Sir, these are the subordinates of the young city lord. You can't afford to offend them." At the same time, many of the cultivators communicated with Jian Shen secretly. As soon as Jian Shen heard them mention the young city lord, he immediately understood everything. His eyes became frosty, and he said coldly, "Let her go." Seeing how Jian Shen insisted on standing in their way, the young city lord's subordinates were angered, and their faces sank. Immediately, 3 of them drew low-quality saint artifacts and howled as they charged towards Jian Shen aggressively. Jian Shen was indifferent. He only swung his hand casually, and the street immediately became filled with dazzling light. Sharp sword chi had already enveloped all of the young city lord's subordinates. Immediately, the 3 low-quality saint artifacts shattered under the light, reduced to dust. Under the sword chi, the deities who were taking the young lady away seemed to be carved up. Their flesh began to vanish as their bones turned to dust. In an instant, all the deities vanished. They were reduced to nothingness under the light. However, they were still alive. Their souls hovered there blankly as they stared at Jian Shen in fear. Jian Shen had only destroyed their bodies, not their souls. The bustling street fell silent. Everyone could not help but stop on the 2 sides of the street as they stared at the souls floating in the air. They were shocked and felt emotional turmoil. Destroying the bodies of a few deities was nothing difficult. The overgods in the crowd could easily achieve the same thing. However, destroying their bodies as easily and casually as Jian Shen, with just a simple gesture, was simply too shocking. Why, you wait here." At this moment, the souls finally returned to their senses. After throwing that down, they immediately flew towards the city lord's estate. As if he had just completed a small task, Jian Shen ignored the flying souls and slowly made his way over to the young lady. He asked, "Are you fine?" The young lady was extremely pale. Fear and dread filled her face. She could not help but pull away from Jian Shen, and she said with a trembling voice, I. She wanted to tell him she was fine, but she was unable to utter the last 2 words with her trembling voice. After all, she was only a teenager. She had never experienced something like that, so her mental fortitude obviously was not tough. She had been stunned by what had just happened. Don't be afraid. As long as I'm here, no one in Scarlet Water City will be able to harm you, Jian Chen said softly. Su Ran stood to one side and watched everything unfold. She did not say anything at all. In her eyes, Jian Chen's actions were completely pointless. Who knows how many years she had cultivated already, and who knows how many times she had seen matters similar to this. As a result, she had already grown numb to it all. She could never take pity on people like Jian Chen. At this moment, a pressure appeared. From the direction of the city lord's estate, over 100 armored soldiers flew over under the lead of an old man. Caretaker, it's him. He's the one who destroyed our bodies, a soul said loudly from beside the old man. Even without the old man's orders, the soldiers behind him all surged forth and surrounded Jian Chen and the young lady. The young lady was nervous. She was terrified as her body trembled. Don't be scared. Jian Chen placed his arm on the young lady's shoulder gently and comforted her. Sir, who are you? How dare you injure people of our city lord's estate in Scarlet Water City? How bold of you! The old man hovered 3 meters in the air and called out coldly. What crimes has this young lady committed? Why do you want to take her away? Jian Chen stared straight at the old man. The old man immediately snorted coldly in response. It's all up to our city lord to decide who we want to take and what crimes we want to charge them with. However, you have committed a crime punishable by death. You injured the people of our city lord's estate. With that, the old man waved his hand and ordered, capture this person. If he resists, kill him on the spot. Immediately, all the cultivators gathered in the surroundings moved far away. The many structures that stood around the street activated their formations at that moment as well. The soldiers who surrounded Jian Chen and the young lady immediately fell into a battle formation. Powerful energy surged towards Jian Chen aggressively. Is the city lord's estate of the Scarlet Water City this unreasonable? If that's the case, there's no need for the city lord's estate to exist any longer, Jian Chen said coldly. He directly ignored the formation that the soldiers stood in. Even though many of the soldiers were gods and their formation could threaten over gods, it was still nothing in Jian Chen's eyes. He swung his hand just like before and collapsed the formation, heavily injuring over 100 soldiers in a single moment. Afterwards, he arrived before the old man like a ghost with a single movement. Before the old man could even react, Jian Chen grabbed him by the throat and lifted him up. The old man was shocked. Only now did he realize just how terrifying of an expert he had provoked. As he was filled with fear, he forced out with great difficulty, the Scarlet Water City is the territory of the Gloomwater sect, and our city lord is an envoy of the Gloomwater sect with a very great status. If you offend us, that's offending the Gloomwater sect. The Gloomwater sect will never spare you. He would have been better off not mentioning the Gloomwater sect, but now that he did, Jian Chen's killing intent immediately skyrocketed. Originally, he had no intentions of killing the old man, but Jian Chen struggled to contain his killing intent after the old man mentioned the Gloomwater sect. The hand that grasped the old man's neck suddenly flashed with sword chi. A strand of sharp sword chi directly punched through his head, killing him on the spot. Chapter 2445, Destroying the City Lord's Estate, 2. The instant the old man died, a powerful senses of the soul suddenly swept through the Scarlet Water City, engulfing all the streets. The owner of the senses of the soul was a peak god king. Originally, it would have been impossible for him to discover Jian Chen's existence with the strength of the senses of his soul. However, Jian Chen did not hide himself. He let out his presence slightly, disguising himself as an early god king. As a result, he was clearly exposed before the senses of the soul. Humph. A cold snort rang out in Jian Chen's head. It was filled with killing intent. At the same time, the ground of Scarlet Water City suddenly shook. A powerful formation rose up, enveloping the entire Scarlet Water City. Even all the teleportation formations there stopped operating. In an instant, the entire city was cut off from the outside world. Jian glanced past the protective formation of Scarlet Water City before looking in the direction of the city lord's estate. He did not let this bother him. Instead, he looked at the young lady and asked, "Little sister, where are your parents?" With that, the young lady seemed to forget about her fear. Her eyes reddened, and she slowly told him about her background. As it turned out, her name was Fang Jing'er. She was only 16 this year. Both her parents passed away right after she was born. She was single-handedly raised by her grandfather. Her grandfather, an insignificant person who lived at the bottom of society in the saints' world. He was only a saint emperor, not even at the origin realm. Even with that being the case, although Fang Jing'er did not have endless cultivation resources, she was still able to live a life without worrying about the basic necessities. However, good things never lasted. Her grandfather was injured in the city 3 years ago. He was at death's door and could pass away at any time. After losing her grandfather's support, Fang Jing'er began to depend on herself. She copied a map of the Scarlet Water City her grandfather found many years ago, creating crude maps by hand to sell. Then she used the divine crystals generated by the maps to buy low-level medicinal pills that cost 100 low-grade divine crystals for her grandfather. "My grandfather needs to eat a pill a month to stay alive. It has already been over 20 days, and I've already sold 9 maps this month. I only need to sell 1 more before I gather all the divine crystals needed for a pill. Fortunately, they didn't take me away, or I would have never been able to sell 10 maps. If I don't feed my grandfather the pill, he'll die. These people are just evil." Fang Jing'er was still shaken. She only thought about her grandfather now. Jian sighed as he listened to the young lady's difficult, miserable fate. After a moment of thought, he said, "I plan on going to the city lord's estate." "Little sister, just come with us. I want you to personally witness the people who wanted to capture you vanish before your eyes." Jian also understood that this might be far too horrific a sight to a young lady who had not completely grown up. However, this was the saints' world, a world where the strong preyed on the weak. The only way to survive was to adapt to the laws. At the same time, 3 middle-aged men sat at a round table within the city lord's estate. The table was covered in various delicious dishes. One of them happened to be the city lord of Scarlet Water City, Guan Feiyu. The other 2 were envoys of the Gloomwater sect. They were all late god kings. "Brother Feiyu, why did your complexion suddenly change? And it seems like the protective formation of the city has been activated as well." The 2 envoys looked at the city lord and said rather politely. Not only was Guan Feiyu an envoy like them, but the Guan family also had an ancestor who was an authoritative elder in the Gloomwater sect. As a result, the 2 envoys were very careful before Guan Feiyu. They flattered him, unwilling to offend him at all. "It's nothing. Just a small problem has appeared. Just wait here for a while, I'll be right back." Guan Feiyu stood up and was about to leave. Boom! However, at this moment, a deafening sound rang out, and the entire city lord's estate shook. The formations around the city lord's estate had encountered a powerful attack. Guan Feiyu's face immediately darkened. Killing intent flooded his eyes, and he said coldly, "I was just about to go find you, yet you've come yourself. Humph, you're looking to die for acting so reckless after killing people of my estate." With a single movement, Guan Feiyu vanished. Jian stood with his arms behind his back outside the city lord's estate. He faced the main entrance calmly. Behind him stood the indifferent Su Ran and the flustered Fang Jing'er. Over a dozen soldiers tossed and turned on the ground around Jian as they called out in pain. "Who are you? Why have you come to make trouble in my Scarlet Water City?" A call rang out. The city lord, Guan Feiyu, had appeared. He hovered in the air as his presence surged. The 2 other envoys of the Gloomwater sect hovered behind Guan Feiyu. They gave off sharp presences as they expressed that they stood on Guan Feiyu's side. "The young city lord of the Scarlet Water City wants to capture this young lady. May I ask what crime she has committed and why you want to capture her?" Jian asked calmly. She's a mere heaven saint master. Let alone capture, even if she's killed in the streets, there won't be any problems at all. No one dares to defy the decisions of our city lord's estate as long as they're in Scarlet Water City. On the other hand, not only have you killed people of our city lord's estate, but you've even attacked the city lord's estate out of ill intention as well. That's a crime punishable by death. You deserve no mercy. Guan Feiyu said coldly. His eyes were sharp like a hawk's as he stared right at Jianchen. He did not dare to be careless when he saw how fearless Jianchen was. Immediately, he formed a seal with his hands and controlled the protective formation of Scarlet Water City. Immediately, the protective formation that enveloped the entire Scarlet Water City shone brightly. Pulses of powerful energy surged out like tidal waves as a grand pressure flooded the surroundings. It made all the people in Scarlet Water City pale in shock. Guan Feiyu sure was cautious. Even though Jianchen only presented himself as an early God King, quite a lot weaker than the late God King Guan Feiyu, the former still chose to use the formation to deal with the enemy. The protective formation of the Scarlet Water City had been cast down by the primordial realm ancestor of the Guan family. As it operated, it could even hold off primordial realm experts for a while. Of course, that was only referring to early infinite primes. A streak of light fell from the sky. It seemed to be tangible as it illuminated the surroundings. With terrifying energy that struck fear into the hearts of all the cultivators in the city, it directly enveloped Jianchen. You're tuning in to the Biyao's Wuxia Chronicles YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.